Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 56 of Technically Trek. I am your humble host, Dave Prime, and over yonder there is our ditzy witch, Captain Katie. How are you doing today, my dear?
I I'm doing okay. I'm very happy. I've celebrated my birthday this weekend and
Birthday.
I partied, I enjoyed, and I'm loving life right now.
That's good. Yeah, I'm glad to be alive. It's another day sober. I'm getting that much closer to that 1 year benchmark, and I actually got to see Cassie for a little bit yesterday. Rescued him. Needed a jump, and so I gave him a jump for his car or his truck, I should
Oh
say.
bless. I
Yeah,
hope he's okay.
what's that?
I hope he's okay.
He's doing well. Yeah, he and Manu did a little treasure hunting recently, and they're going on another
Yeah.
excursion in a couple of days. Could turn out. Who knows? That could be a topic of discussion on the main show, which hopefully soon it'll start coming back on Wednesdays. But if it wasn't for Dangerous Thoughts, this show wouldn't exist. So just big shout out to Manu and Tyson. And Tyson has not shown up yet, so hopefully he's doing okay.
Yes, how dare he be late? I'll be having
Yeah.
work with
uh,
him when he turns up.
What's that?
I'll be having words with that mister when he turns up.
Well, he didn't say anything about missing the episode, so I don't know. But one thing we won't miss is my partnership with W Energy Drinks. Is saying you can go to w.gg and enter the code TechTrek, TEKTREK, and you get 10% off any order that you place online. And they got some pretty good deals right now. So I think you can get 4 tubs for $99, and then get an extra 10% off of that. Say that's a heck of a deal. So if you need that little energy bump without the caffeine jitters, W's the way to go. But so this is going to be the first of what I am dubbing Borg month with Technically Trek, and we're going to start
Yeah.
off with the big one, first contact day, your birthday, as was mentioned, your first foray into the Trek franchise. So yay!
Yes,
Yeah, I'd say
this
so.
movie for me is what made me fall in love with Trek. So not only do I share my birthday with First Contact Day, but this movie holds a very special place in my heart.
Hmm. And I'm sure we'll be hitting on a lot of that as the conversation progresses. But so I'm wearing my usual little Enterprise E t-shirt, but I'm also wearing my Pride. Well, it's Voyager, but it's like the
Yes.
was came out with Generations and stuff too. So just like yeah, and with my rainbow headphones. So we're going to talk about
And
First
I've got my
Contact
rainbow
tonight.
keyboard.
What's that?
I've got my rainbow keyboard to blend in.
Yeah, so we got First Contact tonight. Next week we're going to go back to the original origins of the Borg, and we're going to delve into the episode Q Who, which is another not just a good Borg episode introduction, but also a great Q episode as well.
Oh,
Saying,
definitely.
yeah, the speech Picard gives at the end of that episode, just like, and you want me to say, "I need you, I need you," and but that the next week, in case you guys haven't heard from before, Manu Intiraymi is going to be guest starring in this episode of Technically Trek as we talk about the Voyager episode Q2, when he has some interactions with Q's son, which is the real life son of actor John Delancey, Keegan Delancey. So
Yeah.
looking forward to that, and then to wrap up the month, we're going to talk about regeneration from Enterprise, when the Borg got scary again. Which again, Enterprise did it right. They didn't name it by Borg, and the way they ended that episode, it was a good little nonsense. Like we just postponed the inevitable for a century or so, or generation or two. I think it's what Archer said.
200 years, I think he said.
Mm.
Mm.
But I mean, it all whoops, it all kind of gets interconnected. So I mean, that then explains the Hansons why they went to the Delta Quadrant. So,
Well, yeah. And
but
I like how it all links in. I
mhm,
really do, because I know that so many people have like issues with like prequels and things like that. But the episode of Enterprise where they discover the Borg like scattered, that ties in with this movie. So, and they predicted that it was that the ship was spherical in nature. So they really did do a good job of linking it in. And yeah, I like how they did it.
yeah, well, we won't jump the gun too far because we got folks backstage. So, Travis and Tyson, how are you two lovebirds doing?
No.
I'm trying to get signed in. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Trying to get signed into to YouTube so I can chat. It's just I've had to upgrade my computer and it's been a nightmare.
Hmm. And I just want to say
So
apologies if it looks like I'm kind of tipping my nose up at everybody. I'm going to get another pair of glasses that just has my reading glasses in here because I can't really see the screen with the regular lenses, but if I tip up, I can read everything just fine. So just like oi oi oi,
Mm.
growing pains of having new specs for the first time in 5 years.
God, I can't wear my reading glasses. I because I upgraded to really giant screens and everything is magnified. I
Hmm.
don't need the glasses. I can see everything perfect. So when I put on my glasses, it's just now I'm looking at your pores. It's really no.
Oh
So
God,
your
no,
brain,
don't pause.
but yeah, it's like kind of mentioned before, saying I am foregoing my AA meeting this week, so we can talk as long as we want, as long as we don't get too technically off track. But I know Tyson, though, you probably got to bounce for your
Yep.
radio net control and all that.
I'll be here till 6:40 ish
640 is.
thereabouts.
So
How
that's
dare
well,
you
that's
leave
like
it
most of the normal run of the show. See, what about you, Travis? I know Phil said he's going to be late as usual, but he says that once you see me on camera, you'll see why. So I'm kind of intrigued what he means by that.
He's gonna dress like a tribble. I'm here. I'm here till the very end, as best possible I can be.
That's good. But anyways, with the episode, that opening bit still really gets me. I mean, the beginning of it's great with is like Goldsmith's score, wonderful job. But then it starts with a close up of Picard's eye and just zooms out, just show that how massive that Borg cube was inside.
Oh, that was just beautiful. I mean, it's actually the music for the opening credits. Why I looked at the TV that day when I was like 14 years old,
Hmm.
because it was so intense. And then that opening scene that you've just described, I was hooked. And my homework from school was just getting pushed further and further aside. And by the time Picard is on the call with the Admiral, it was forgotten about.
Hmm.
And I was just like, I am so into this. I am so in love with it. And when I found out that it was Star Trek, I was just like, oh, hell no. I'm going to become a Trekkie after this movie. And, and that is how my love story with Trek began.
Yeah, but
See,
the
I have a
but
little different. I have a little different experience because I remember I was a teenager, uh, and I was in high school at that time. It was in 1996, correct? And
mhm.
I remember my friends and me, we talked about this whole new. We was like, I can't believe they're gonna bring the Borg on the big screen. And I remember going to the theater. This was like the Friday night when it came out, and I was just like, I'm really excited for this. And I heard one of my friends say to another friend, "Holy hell, that looked like a horror. That looked like almost a horror movie instead of a Star Trek movie." When the opening scene popped when it came on and stuff. He was like, he's like, I kind of jumped. He said, I may have to check myself because I feel like I may have peed. Because he said that when it came out of Picard's cheek, he was like, that just freaked him out. I was like, well, yeah, that's what the Borg. And then it was interesting to see that I knew these Borg was going to get an upgrade in this in this in this movie because I'm used to seeing what the Borg look like in TNG, but these Borgs, boy, you could just tell when the camera was panning out and it was just going out, and you just kind of look even like, okay, they did some very stunning.
I have to do this quick. This failed miserably. Happy birthday, Katie.
Oh,
So this
That's sweet.
I
I
so
love
it's
you
turning out.
so much. Thank you.
I had this whole little sort of extra plan for this, and everything kind of fell apart. So this was sort of makeshift at the last minute. So yeah, I
Oh,
was
thank
going
you
to this
so
little
much.
grocery store was completely sold out of cupcakes for whatever reason. I threw that together like really quick. Our candles I found out have melted from last year. I was like, are you kidding me? So,
See, I was going to get a cupcake myself, but I just ran out of time and just.
unfortunately, I can't share this, but I will eat yours on your behalf.
Yes, please do. Do you know what? I just need to tell you. I just need to tell you something, and you're going to laugh at this, but it was so sweet. On Saturday, I had to go to my friend Louise's house because her and Paige had cooked up this big, massive surprise for me. I'm sure you've all seen the photos on social media. Um, oh, thank you, Tyson. And I've made an offhand comment a few times that I don't like cake, but Louise can cook really beautiful roast chickens. And I said to her, I said, if you want to cook me a chicken and stick candles in that, I'll have that instead of a birthday cake.
Great.
When I got there, I was just walking up the path, the door locked, and they wouldn't let me into Louise's house. And all I heard from inside was, ow, no, what are you doing? Ow, are you okay? We won't be a minute. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on? And then I saw what I can only describe as fire through the like patterned window, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I've got one of Louise's daughters just waving at me like this. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on? They finally let me in after I thought they were dying or killing each other. And they presented me with 2 roast chickens with sparkles in it.
Oh,
I'm going to embarrass Paige so much right now. And I really don't care. But the reason why is because they put the sparklers in upside down and they nearly set the chickens alight.
oh, geez.
Oh boy.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so it was very fun and it was very funny. And yeah, so yeah, I just had to tell that story.
Aw.
With Phil presented me that cake, and oh, what the hell is going on?
I think we lost.
You're
Hey.
a glitch in the matrix.
Yeah, that usually happens to me. Thank God it's somebody else this time. You caught whatever
Oh.
virus I used to have.
Hey,
Enjoy.
hey! It was some Borg nanoprobes. They're trying to simulate your system.
Right.
Yeah.
But I did a whole Windows update, and you know when you upgrade Windows, what it loves to do is erase all of your cache, your whole history.
Oh
So every
no!
password I had to every little like I couldn't get into my mail. First of all, Dave
I
texted
could.
me the link to the show. And it's on my phone, it's not on my computer, so I have to email it. So then I didn't sign into my email because everything's been upgraded, so I have to sign into email. I don't remember my password from 10 years ago, so I had to reset the password. Then I finally get in, but I can't comment because I'm not signed into YouTube, which you have to be signed in to comment. So my YouTube password didn't work, so I had to get a verification code to re-sign into YouTube. Like this has been my nightmare ever since I upgraded my Windows. So
Well,
don't
at least
upgrade.
we got it
Not worth it.
figured out before Dangerous
Like
Thoughts
that.
goes back on the air.
Well, yeah. Well. The thing is, I'm net controlled tonight. You know
Yeah.
where everything is? Everything is on Google Docs. That means I got to freaking figure out how to sign in. That's why I got to leave at 6:45 or 6:40 instead of straight up at 7, because I got to figure out how to log in to get the Google Docs so that I can have my roster to check people in. Oh my goodness, it's just what a
Tyson,
night.
I'm sorry to hear that. You know, it's one of those days that's a Monday. You just think that you hope the Monday will go well, and it just turns out to fall apart.
I'm taking a 7-day vacation starting tomorrow at 4 p.m. So I work tomorrow. After that, I'm off for 7 days. So I'm having to work late tonight and tomorrow night to catch up on the work so that I can have that 7 days guilt free. Not leaving unfinished work. So it's today and tomorrow is just a lot. But then, oh my goodness, I won't have to look at my stupid computer for a week. I'm so happy.
Hmm.
My eyes are happy. My glasses are happy. Everybody's happy.
Ah,
Before we get the show started properly, can I just show you all something? Because you are all a part of it.
Sure.
sure.
I won't be a minute.
Hope she's not taking anything off.
Yes, I'm going to do a strict tease.
Oh, Tyson.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I like that comedic humor.
You might need to change the cameras for this.
Aw.
Ooh, wow.
Oh,
Wow.
okay. Wow.
Zoe, that can go full screen.
I don't know. I don't know how to do it on screen. I'm a terrible co-host,
No,
people.
Yeah,
hold on a second.
Dave can put you up on the full. There we
There
go.
we
There
go.
we
Yeah,
go. Okay.
Paige made this for me, and for my birthday, and it has everything up. Well, not everything, 'cause everything wouldn't fit, but the main things that are important to me. And there's Dangerous Thoughts, Louise, Paige, and it's got all your names on it somewhere on the board. And then at the bottom, it actually says the date of first contact,
Oh, how
April
sweet is
30th,
that?
1963. And there is so much on this. Yeah, Dave, you're there. Travis, Tyson, Cassie,
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Manny, and yeah. But yeah, so suffice to say, Louise and Paige made me cry on my birthday.
Aw.
Oh,
But that is
Oh.
just absolutely beautiful, and you know, I absolutely adore those women. But I had to show you that because you are all involved in that board.
and
Well,
um, just a quick reminder that I guess you and Manu share a zodiac. His birthday is April 22.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
1 second.
So I think you share zodiac. Maybe you do, or else you're abutted up
I
next
think
to each
I
other.
think he's on the cusp actually between Aries and Taurus. Um,
Taurus makes a lot of sense, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't tell him I said that. Oh shit, this is recorded, isn't it?
yeah, he is a Taurus.
He's a Taurus. Yeah, that
Yeah,
totally like lines up. Okay. Um,
it really does.
so I
To the
gotta.
movie.
I don't
But
know what I'm
yes,
gonna
I'm
do for
sorry
birthday this
to
year.
hold things up. We will start talking about the movie now, but I just had to share that very special thing with you all.
Yeah,
Well,
same
happy
but
birthday.
Happy birthday, and we
Indeed.
appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm glad those tears was tears of joy.
Yeah, Paige knows what's important to me, and all your names are on there.
Alrighty.
But St. Picard actually showed a rare. I'm trying to think of the word. Something that's unusual. He was just frustrated. See, when Riker just like, "Who? Here's our first sensor sweep of the neutral zone," and he's like, "Oh, this is where there are attention." He just chucks the pad on the table, just like that's not the typical Picard. I guess low key he was frustrated the fact that Starfleet feels that he's an unstable element to a critical situation, though
Yeah,
everyone
why
on the
are we out here chasing comets? Let's
yeah,
just say that Starfleet Command has every confidence in the Enterprise and her crew, just not her
but
captain.
not
Well,
in,
can I
Yeah.
just mention something here? The way Picard reacted, when Riker handed in the first sense sweep of the neutral zone, like 20 particles of space per cubic meter. Was it two ultraviolet radiation spikes in a class 2
class
comet?
two
Now,
comment.
yeah, and I'm sorry, but like that may have not been anything to them, but like in today's, in like 2025, that's a hell of a lot. And like our astronauts and scientists would kill to observe that.
Unfortunately,
And
they
it
were
just
being
goes to
killed by the
show.
Borg, so that was like
Oh
more
yeah,
important.
but like the scientists of today and astronauts and people like that, they would kill to study like ultraviolet radiation spikes in a class 2 comet, it, and yet Picard just dismisses it, and it just goes to show what a couple of 100 years can do.
But I
I was gonna say, you think about that too. Picard seemed agitated in that scene because it showed Picard in the way his how they evolved that character, how Sir Patrick Stewart and the writers have came along and evolved that character since we saw him in TNG. Dave, you mentioned that he was frustrated, and his sarcasm, when he was telling Riker, you know that what the situation, what the deal was, and it showed that Picard he wasn't he was more into himself than he were when we first saw him in the counter at Fall Point, and it made him to realize that he isn't the stick up a stick up his ass, kind of captain and stuff and everything else, and he's just keeps things to himself and everything. But it showed that to me, it showed that he was irritated with Starfleet because the Enterprise E was one of the newest ships that they recently christened, and her advances in technology and stuff and everything make, like they said, make them a perfect suitable fit to be on the front lines. But Starfleet, the command they have to take a look at the emotional element too. With like, I mean, do we really want to put this man back in position to face a species that really almost destroyed his own species?
I would think. Okay, I mean, think about war, right? If somebody had, if somebody had attacked my home, my homeland, imprisoned me, tortured me, and freed me, and then there's a war again, would a general or an admiral want me back in that fight, or would they think I might be too psychologically damaged? I think the first of all, it's a valid question, but I think the second question is, what do you, the person who is captain, what do you want? I mean, one person might be like, I am so ready for revenge. You give me a gun, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to kick their asses back, all the way to next Thursday. Another person might say, I never, ever, ever want to be involved in anything with that again. Just keep me away from it. So both valid, right? But if you know who Picard is, he's a fighter. He wants to be, dealt back in. So I think what Starfleet should have done was to consult with him. Maybe even do a psychological eval, whatever they wanted to do, but to summarily dismiss him, especially if that gave him an edge. Like, remember when he got there, he told everybody where to aim, and they blew up the fucking cube. Like, that would have been a good thing to know. Maybe you ask that fucking question before you say no, you can't come to the party, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Just
And there's a twofold thing about that I made it's amazing watching something nearly 30 years later. It's just like, yeah, huh? What? Oh God, why did? Yeah, I was saying because Data seemed genuinely surprised when Picard told him to set the weapons to that one spot as a cube, and he's like, that doesn't appear to be a vital system. Data, you are the one that was able to hack the Borg with a non-vital system.
Dave,
Because
When
really
he
quick,
when he
you're
instructed them to
It may
if
sweep.
not
we
have been a non-vital system initially, but with them all firing in the same spot, I mean, Picard may have just chosen that at random. But if you
yeah,
think about how a Borg cube works, or any Borg vessel, if they're being fired at from all angles, then they can regenerate gradually. But if they're being bombarded in one spot by a full arsenal, they're taking extreme damage in one area rather than little bits of damage in other areas. So even if it wasn't a vital system, because of how much damage was done, it may have gotten to through to a vital system.
remember, Picard could hear the voices in his head still, and if the
True.
cube was concerned about a certain area of the ship, then he would have known that, and the Borg are really working to protect this section. I may not even know what the importance of that is, but if they think it's important, that's where we ought to shoot. The second thing, Dave, can I see your T-shirt? I know your shirt has the Enterprise. I love that. Can I see your T-shirt? Oh my goodness! It is a rainbow prom badge. That
I
is
got
amazing. I
it,
love your outer shirt. You already showed that to us. It's beautiful.
yeah.
And if you want to show it again, just to maybe new viewers, so they can see your actual shirt, because that is especially first contact, because you got the Enterprise E right there.
Enterprise, yeah.
Yeah, that
And,
that is
and it's
beautiful.
got a runabout on there too.
Because why not? Uh,
Yeah.
but no, you are really trekked out. I love it.
Yeah,
I love
I
it too.
figured since I was doing some cleaning and found this shirt again, I thought today would be a day to wear it and just kind of be a little more casual, unbutton it and whatnot.
Let's go back to
Definitely.
this, guys. Let's go
But
back to when Picard gets called to the bridge from Vienna, and you hear them because he asked Data to put Starfleet frequency 478, whatever it is, on on speaker, and they were just sitting there. One thing that really I loved about this scene is the panoramic shot of just hearing their faces, because you hear too that they said that the flagship, the Endeavor, Defiant, and Bozeman was all part of the fleet, that was going to go up against the Borg. And I heard Bozeman. I was like, no way. Bozeman? I mean, do y'all remember in the TNG episode where the Bozeman came in place?
yeah,
If it's the same ship.
yeah, I swear, I still swear that one of the voiceovers during all that comm traffic was Kelsey Grammer. I don't know if it was reused from something else from the episode or if he just had a non-speaking or a non-credited speaking role in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, half the people from Cheers have been on Star Trek in one way or another.
Well,
Yes.
Very true.
Cheers was a holodeck episode.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Lilith has been on
Very
there.
elegantly.
Lilith was the alien who wanted to hump Riker. So Lilith has been on there. Frasier's been on there. Uh, uh, what's the lady that ran the bar? The one who played Savick?
Kirstie Alley.
Kirstie Alley had
Alley.
been on there. I think Sam Malone is the only one who hadn't been on there.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, Ted Danson. I don't think he's been on there. No.
You know who remind somebody? I'm just putting this out. But was it Norm? Norm reminds me of Morn.
Well, Morn is Norm. Say
Yeah,
that's how
Morn
they
is
came up
Norm.
with it. Yeah.
I mean, that's even why his name sounds like Norm, because Norm, he's always at the bar. Like it was a nod to Cheers. Like he was
But
the regular.
they never said when Moore walked in the bar, Moore.
That
You
would have
know,
been that would have been Chef's kiss. I wish they would have done that, but they didn't. They didn't. I mean,
No,
that might have been too on the nose.
but yeah, they definitely had a bit of a Star Trek 6 nod in there early in the movie when Picard cut off communication with the fleet and saying, we're going to go to Earth, and Data's just like, I'm to hell with our orders. It's just kind of a
And
yeah.
that is like
rework
one of
of.
my favourite parts of the movie. That is one of my favourite parts of the movie when Data says that.
I
Because the way that he looks at everyone for solidarity before he says, to hell with our orders, and then like the look on everyone's face is just like, yes, somebody said it and Data did. That is
now
like one of my favourite parts.
I
Well,
am
it's the
going to
fact that
say though,
he.
it was recycled from Star Trek 6
Yes,
when Mr.
That's
yes,
what
Spock at
that's
the
what I
yes.
was just
very end.
saying.
Yep, it was. That's where it was recycled from. Because
If I were,
Uhura it says, Captain, we're being ordered back to space dock to be decommissioned, and you see the sad look on Kirk's face, and Spock says, "If I were human, I believe my no, I believe if I were human, I believe my response would be go to hell."
go to no, it's just like
If
go to hell.
go to hell if I were human. Like, and
Yeah.
then everybody lightens up, and that's when he says, first start of the right straight on till morning, which is obviously from Peter Pan. But that's how you get to Never Never Land, right? Second start of the right, straight on till morning.
I like
Um,
that too. I like that.
Yeah.
it was really, it was really beautiful. But
Yeah,
that's where I think that Data. Every time I hear the Data thing, I think of Star Trek 6. I don't know why.
Absolutely.
that was the same thing with
I
me.
thought that mine too.
But
But
but I would imagine it took the Enterprise a couple of hours to get to Earth from wherever they were at. So got to
Yeah.
Into
give
the
kudos to
neutral zone,
Star.
yeah.
Yeah, kudos to Starfleet for holding up with the Borg a lot longer at Earth than they did at Wolf 359. That was just
I was thinking the same thing too when I remember seeing that. I'm glad you point that out because I'm like, Wolf 359, and there is such a thing as a real Wolf 359. It is
Yeah.
7.8 light years from Earth.
Yep.
The real. So they use that reference and stuff and everything else, and it takes a good long while even for a starship to cross, light years of distance and stuff. I don't know if they encountered the Borg earlier because it was making its way, and because they did significant damage. The whole fleet did significant damage to the outer part of the ship, you know. But the one thing it kept going. But this is one thing too. I know Starfleet has when they come up against the board, and I guess it was Wesley Crusher who came up with retuning the phasers to reset the automatic frequencies and stuff and everything. Every time they discharge their the phasers, it resets it so the board won't adapt to that particular phaser frequency. It just keeps resetting, and the board can adapt to it as quickly as enough and everything else. So Federation starships, they learn that we gotta keep rechanging our frequencies on our phrases and stuff. And to me, that's one of the good advantages that they had going against this cube prior before at Wolf 359. And
Here's what
then
makes
seeing, oh, go ahead, Tyson.
well, here's what makes no sense though. Wolf 359, right? They even with Picard, ultimately Starfleet won. So later in First Contact, they want to take over Earth. They have the transport conduits, and we know they're thousands and thousands of cubes in the Delta Quadrant that could easily take that transwarp conduit and come to Earth. Yet they send one ship. I mean, does that not seem technical? I mean, wouldn't you send like 20 cubes? I mean, now you're like guaranteed. I mean, maybe even that's overkill, but maybe 10, right? You're not going to send one. Look what happened. Look what happened last time. Look what happened this time.
They
Send
were
fucking,
overconfident. The
yeah, you
Borg,
need to.
they were overconfident with themselves. I don't think they think tactically, and stuff. They're all with a unified mind.
All those brains on the ship and not one of the drones was like, maybe we send two. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
You
You
know,
got a
one
good
thing
point
that
there.
a lot of people forget about the Borg is that they are arrogant and they think that they are so freaking superior. One cube will be enough. Now, that is the Borg's Achilles heel,
Right,
is their
right.
arrogance. And, that they're supposed to be devoid of emotion and things like that, but the Queen is not. The Queen is not devoid of emotion, whereas her drones are. So the arrogance of the Borg comes from the Queen, and that's probably why they only sent one. And like, oh yeah, like we may have failed kind of at Wolf 359. We did a lot of damage. We assimilated some people, but maybe we'll learn from experience. And they probably think, oh, we've assimilated a few other cultures, got nabbed some other technology, and they won't have advanced as far as us, so we'll just send one cube again. And that was probably the Queen's thinking. So yeah, that'll be why they only sent one cube. However, they did have the backup of the sphere.
Yeah, well, built into the cube, yeah. But I mean, are they, paying by the hour? Like, just send two. What is, just send two. What I mean, if you're any kind of intelligence, you have a backup plan. You have, and I don't just mean the sphere, like
Yes,
the escape pod built in, but I mean, send a couple of ships. I mean, it's not like I love that spoof, with the. Did you see the Family Guy Star Wars? And the escape pod goes, oh, there's no life sign. They're getting ready to show, oh, there's no life sign, and the guy is like, what are we paying by the laser? Like, like it was hilarious. Anyway, but that was kind of what I was thinking. Like, are we paying by the cube? Just fucking send two ships. Not
You
gonna,
would think that.
if it's
but
not needed, it's not needed. But
Right.
damn, I mean, how
but
stupid.
also you've got to think about this. The Queen, she, even though she doesn't like losing any of her own, that specific mission, I believe they they had the backup of the built-in sphere, because I don't think all of them have that backup. So that specific cube with the backup sphere was specifically sent because all they needed to do was get close to Earth, and then I don't understand exactly why they needed to get so close to Earth, unless they were going on the time travel thing of, you know,
You would think
um,
that they could have
you,
time traveled first and then gone to Earth, right?
well,
Now
So
this
there's
is
no
what
opposition.
I think. But they basically fought their way through to get as close to Earth as possible, and the drones on that cube were basically expendable. The cube was cannon fodder. It was the sphere that had to get through. And on that sphere, that there were enough drones to assimilate Earth before first contact happened.
But why,
And
if that's the case, and I agree with you, if that's the case, though, once you're at Earth, why sit there and wait till your ship is almost destroyed to send out the sphere? I mean, once you're there, send out the sphere. Do it now. Get it before fucking Picard gets here and blows your ass up, right? If Dana
yeah,
sent it just 5 minutes earlier, the Enterprise wouldn't have been there, couldn't have followed him back. They would have totally won.
yes. However, what happened to the Enterprise? They got caught in the temporal wake of the the vortex. So they they didn't just get there and send the sphere out, because if they created a temporal vortex and any of the other ships got caught up in it, those ships could have gone back as well, and it could have spoiled their plans. So they needed to basically get rid of enough of Starfleet as possible, enough ships as possible, so that they can get through to create the temporal vortex, so that they alone got through. And the plan for the Enterprise, they got caught in that temporal wave. So, and that as Data said, that somehow protected them from the changes in the timeline. So I think that there is method to this madness, and I see the method to it and why it was done how it was done. It makes perfect sense to me. I'm just not explaining it very well.
Can I throw something out as well?
Yeah.
As far as sending one ship, I was always kind of under the impression that was kind of the Borg's plan. Like, they just wanted to keep Starfleet busy while they sacrificed a ship. Basically, let's send this, keep Starfleet busy, let them blow us up. We're sending this thing through, and then we're going to really take over Earth. I always thought that was kind of the plan.
Talking about that, I never thought of it before. Was that the plan all along, or was it a plan B when they realized that, yeah, they are fucking us up pretty bad?
Kind of under the impression. I mean, I could be wrong, but I was always kind of under that impression that was the plan. The Borg cube was just there as a sacrifice. It was there just as a decoy, or what do you call it? What's the right word? Not a decoy, but I guess like a sacrifice, basically, so that they could send the sphere.
Yeah, the cube was cannon fodder, basically, and it was the sphere that had to get through, and because I believe that the sphere was the only part of the Borg army, that had the necessary technology on it, specifically to create the temporal vortex, because it's not something
that was sacrificed to once they got there. They still blew it up once they got through.
No, it was the Enterprise that destroyed them, and
they destroyed the sphere. I guess they didn't have expected this Enterprise to go through as well, but that's true.
Because the sphere got destroyed. Tyson.
Yeah, I gotta go. Bye, guys.
Already?
Yeah, 45. 5:45.
Wait, you said 6:45. It's only 5:45 over there.
Oh, well, it's 6:45 where you are. You know what I meant.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, Tyson. One thing I want to say is, before we jump ahead, let's bring us back around to this. The opening scene showing when the cube was approaching Earth, when the Defiant, when you saw two torpedoes, blast the hell out of it, and then you saw the Defiant. Boy, oh boy! And when I was in the theater with my friends and stuff, we all cheered. I remember other people cheered too. We all got up. We just woo, the Defiant. And then, we saw Worf. We knew who was on board stuff and everything. We just started cheering when we saw the Defiant just come in with her phase pulse cannons just blasting. And here's a little thing. I don't know if you know this, Dave, or if you put this down in your notes and stuff. The helmsman of the Defiant was Adam Scott.
Who was the changeling that he was interrogating in season 3 of Picard.
No. He wasn't. No. That was Adam Scott is an actor who started Park and Recreation, and he was in Step Brothers. This was when he was in a much younger role.
Wow! Which character? He's in Severance right now, right?
That's Adam Scott.
God, which one was he again?
Adam Scott. He was in Park and Recreation, the TV show.
We're in First Contact.
He was the helmsman of the Defiant.
Now I have to look at that again.
Yeah, he said, main power's offline, our weapons are gone, and
shields and weapons are gone.
Yeah, he was giving a brief update to Worf about, and then Worf ordered, a collision course. And then, he said another starship is coming in. He said it's the Enterprise. And all of a sudden you just see this big, massive ship, which compared to Defiant was just overwhelming. And I was like, there she is. She's there to save your high and stuff and everything. And then, hearing Riker say, the Defiant is losing life support. And then Picard said, transport to room 3 and being the Defiant survivors aboard. I was
Oh,
like, I like how they did that. I like how they incorporated the DS9 into the show and into the movie.
they had to
That
get Worf back on there. So
Yeah.
that's
Exactly.
what I'm
They
talking
had
about.
no choice because they needed Worf.
yeah,
Well, Riker answered he knew how to still fire the phasers.
Yeah, say
Oh,
the
I know.
as serious as this movie was for a lot of overall, they definitely had a good job at doing those subtle digs. And it's just like tough little ship, and Worf's like little. He was like like offended.
It was like, watch it now. I can run rings around you, Enterprise.
Yeah, but to kind of tie that into DS9 even further, the way that the timeline worked with the movie and the DS9 series is that we didn't see the Defiant for a couple episodes because of what happened
Yes,
at
good
Earth with the
point.
Borg, and they actually made mention that specifically after the Borg gets under repair.
Cisco. Yeah, he basically laid that Starfleet is pretty thin because of the Borg incursion and other stuff. And I was like, oh, that's a really good way of tying Deep Space Nine into what happened into the movies. And you're right. Why the Defiant was absent for quite a bit. Even Picard told um, Worf, she's adrift but salvageable, which I'm glad that, a lot of the ships, besides the Defiant, were salvageable after the battle.
Yeah,
But
but
also, this movie was tied into Voyager as well. Because this attack on Earth was mentioned in the is it the episode of Voyager where Seven of Nine is jumping through time and
oh
trying to stop
yeah,
Voyager being
Relativity.
Year of Hell.
relativity. Is it relativity? No, that's the
No,
name of the ship, isn't it?
it was
No, no,
Year of
no.
Hell.
Year of
It was Year
Hell.
of Hell because yeah, they were doing trivia in the
No,
Turbo Lift.
no, it wasn't the Year of Hell episode. It was later on. Seven of Nine is jumping through time. That was
Relativity. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
relativity. And when she was recruited again by Ransom and the other dude, um, they were asking all these like different effects on the timeline, and one of the examples that she gave was the Borg going back in time to assimilate Earth, but the Enterprise stopped them and reset the timeline.
Yeah, the Pogo paradox, but she was explaining because Lieutenant Duquesne asked her, can you explain, uh, the
Mm.
Pogo paradox. The Pogo paradox basically says,
Yeah,
to prevent an event, you actually trigger the event to actually happen and stuff and everything else. So, I remember she
yeah,
mentioned the
and then
Dolly
she
paradox.
mentioned yeah, and then she mentioned about the Borg going back in time.
Example. That,
Yeah,
that,
so
that,
yeah,
that, was, that was
so
an
First
example.
Contact
There's our
was
troll.
tied into
All right.
Voyager as well. And so in a way, I mean, it was tied into all of them. Obviously, tied into Next Gen because it's the Next Gen crew. Tied into DS9 with the mention of the Defiant being under repair because of the attack, and then tied into Voyager with Seven of Nine mentioning that. So it is really good how they managed to, because that attack on Earth actually happened, I believe, after Voyager was taken into the Delta Quadrant.
Voyager was already in a Delta Quadrant prior
Yeah,
to, prior to First Contact and stuff. Because Voyager had been there for about 2 years already.
yeah. Well, yeah, I thought that as well. And yeah, so obviously they heard about all of this when they got back in touch with Starfleet, and obviously Seven of Nine would have had knowledge of it from being a Borg, you know. So it is really good how they tied all that in.
And speaking about because you mentioned at the top about I think it was you, Katie, about the Admiral Hayes. Speaking about Voyager, I'm so happy that they brought him back as Admiral Hayes to communicate with Voyager. In what's that? Hope and Fear? Not Hope and Fear. Yes, Hope
That's,
and Fear.
oh
Admiral Hayes,
yeah,
because
yeah. It's the windbag.
Janeway referred to Admiral Hayes as a windbag, and
Oh,
Admiral Hayes is the same character, same actor who was the one that contacted Picard to tell him the situation, give him a situation report, and that's another little tie-in thing that I love.
Well, and I believe Hayes was actually in
yeah.
the that Harry Kim episode when he got that timey wimey thing where he and I forget the other character's name end up switching places, but the Cosimo guy.
Oh yeah,
They
I know the exact episode you're talking about too. I know the exact episode you're talking
I can't think.
I had the name of the episode in my head earlier, but all of a sudden it's just gone.
non-sequential, something like that.
What's that?
Non-sequential, something like that.
Well,
Non-sequential.
yeah, yeah. Just one more time, Travis, since you're coming through it a little muffled.
What's that sound?
It,
What is that? Does anyone else
Was
hear
it
that
something
sound?
I said?
what?
No, I was just gonna say, was it something I said?
Does anyone else hear a sound in the background?
Can you hear me now?
Other than my tinnitus,
Oh,
don't hear anything unusual.
It's probably the fans that I've got on in my bedroom because
oh,
I
right.
don't
Well, that
like
might be it.
anything
Okay.
remotely warm.
I'm back if anybody can hear me.
Okay,
Yay!
But okay, Dave. I was just thinking it's like something like non-sequel or something, but
non sequitur.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
That's the one.
that's the name of the episode.
Yeah, yeah. But before we move on, like I said, and Katie pointed that out because I didn't even think about that until she pointed. First Contact really did a good way of bringing, how TNG, DS9, and Voyager in connection. But we are going to, you said in the future Trek Talk, we're going to be right back talking about this because we go back to Enterprise and stuff, and it's just like the Pogo paradox really did come into play. To
Yeah.
prevent the event, you actually trigger the event.
Yeah, and it just the way that it all ties in, it is done so well. Um, it it's one of the things that I love so much about Trek is because things are tied in so well, and even when people don't really like it, um, and it for the most part it keeps its continuity.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah,
But
I heard that as it went.
after they went through the temporal rift, the Enterprise and stuff, after they destroy, you know, well, real quick, hey, Tyson's not here to say this, but I didn't even realize it until people started analyzing. They went frame by frame. The Millennium Falcon appeared in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
I
The
See,
lost.
Millennium.
some
Yeah,
hardcore Trekkies were a little upset over that.
I was like, the Millennium Falcon actually appeared. Star Wars, it was so fast and so brief. I mean, it's like frame by frame. You have to really, pause it to see.
It's
That is the Millennial Falcon.
Well, and it's not the first. That's not the first time that something from the Star Wars franchise crossed over into the Trek franchise. Because with the Star Trek 2009 movie, R2D2's tumbling in the debris from the attack
Yeah,
on
I was
Vulcan.
just gonna say what
Really, I
wasn't
did not
the
know that.
yeah,
You did not
I
know
thought
that?
that was well known. I thought that was as well known as the Millennium Falcon. R2D2 is just is just floating quite happily in all the debris.
Wow. No, I did not know that. That's
It's ILM though, like they do that all the time. They'll if they're working on different films, they'll throw little things like that and
Well,
not
we
say anything.
other than Star Trek 5, and I think probably the first the motionless picture is ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, was the special effects
yes.
team that put
Yeah,
together for all the Star Trek movies.
yeah.
Yeah, they did. I
On
mean, the
reverse,
models. I'm sorry, Phil, go ahead.
on the flip side of that, wasn't if I'm not mistaken, I'll have to look for this again. The Phantom Menace, when that big auditorium scene, and I know there's a big,
Hmm.
the little ETs in there. Somebody said there's a Kirk and Spock in one of them, and you have to. And I've yet to find that, but I'm
What?
Kirk and Spock are in one of those little pods in that scene. But I'll have to look for
I
that.
I
Really?
had not heard that, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did pull that
Yeah.
off. So that'd be only fair to kind of put Star Trek into Star Wars. So,
But yeah,
but
the Enterprise went through the vortex, and watching them come through. But once they went through the vortex, I like how they cut through to the scene where they just start showing, the planet, what's happening and stuff. You're like, okay, what's going on? What's going to happen and stuff, and then you just realize, wait, I know that actor from somewhere. I seen him and everything. He's tall and stuff, and I'm like, oh, he's in this movie. Was it James? What's his last name?
Cromwell?
Cromwell. Yeah, James Cromwell.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
And I was just like, okay. This is going to be pretty interesting if he's in this movie and stuff.
I'd still only known him from Babe the Pig. That's all I could remember.
yeah,
That's all I remember from at that time. But oh yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
Cromwell's popped up a couple of times. He was one of those administrators from.
Yes.
I'm blanking on the name of the episode. It's
Oh.
those conditioned soldiers that were put into jail.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, I
And
don't
saying
know
he
that
was
one.
able to hide, they were able to hide themselves from sensors and whatnot, and he was running crazy on the Enterprise. It's from the third season.
Oh,
And then
Yeah,
then
because there was an
he
application you
played
can
that
send.
weird alien in Homefront,
Yes. Yes.
saying that
Yes.
Moog was alive.
okay.
What
But
were you
yeah,
going to say, Travis?
no. I was just gonna say, he did. He has had a few tenures in Star Trek that some of us, who are really diehard Trekkie fans will realize. Hey, he did a tour on TNG twice, um, and he did. Wait, was it twice on TNG or just? Was he in Deep Space Nine too?
Yeah, he played the same race of alien in DS9 as well. Let me.
Because I was so surprised to see him. When the scene came up, I was just like, "Wait, they brought him back. They brought him in. What is his role?" I didn't really put two and two together until I was like, maybe he is Zephyr Prime, and stuff. But I didn't really put two and two. I was just so engaged with how things were moving so fast. Then you start seeing Lily say, "What's that?" He was like, "That's the constellation Leo." She said, "No, that." And then you start seeing, something just coming down, laying, blowing things up and stuff and everything. And then, people running around screaming and stuff and everything else. And then here come the Enterprise finally through. And I'm like, okay, okay, this is how this is gonna go. You know? I was just so enthralled in the whole, in that whole part, of like, so they're going back in time and to do what? And then when we got to, the Enterprise and stuff, and they was able to destroy the cube, then they started figuring out exactly what time, the date, the time and date that they was at, and stuff that they landed at stuff. And then you start thinking, wow, this is where the writers was going at when they said first contact.
Hmm.
This is what they were meaning by like stop first contact, and stuff. And it was pretty. It was as a teenager back in those days. It was pretty impressive to see them kind of give a little bit insight of how the origin story of humans achieve warp flight in the Star Trek realm.
Oh yeah, and it was the third season episode was The Hunted, and it was Birthright, not Homefront. Homefront was a different DS9 episode.
Okay, okay.
But yeah, he was also let's see, pull it up here again. The dia, and he was Hanok in yeah, he was the alien that Quark was trying to bamboozle the starship down when they had the
Oh,
Dominion
oh, he was,
torpedo stuck
yeah,
in the Defiant.
yeah, he was one of the Karma.
Karma, yeah.
He was a Karma. Yeah, I remember that.
Hold on, there's a comment here. Damien Dark.
Yeah,
What the
Neil
hell do you
McDonough.
know?
Yeah, Lieutenant Hawk played Damien Dark in Legends of Tomorrow and other
Yeah, I
Arrowverse
knew I
shows.
recognized him. I've been
What's
trying to
that?
think all this time. I didn't even think to freaking Google it. But I've been trying to think all this time why I recognize him. And yeah, of course, Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah,
Somebody
it's
say
saying
somebody say he's a rip off of a younger Matt Damon when he was sitting there.
the original script for First Contact was had Hawk as an openly gay officer, but they
Yes, I
scrubbed
heard
it
that.
Oh.
because it was still the 90s. They weren't quite ready for that. So,
Hmm.
Yeah,
but
the night was still progress. It was still moving, in that, trying to still break some ground without shattering too much because of the kickback, especially, with what happened in the episode with Terry Farrell making out with another woman.
Lenara Khan, yep.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But the next generation Section 31 novel Rogue predominantly focused on Hawk being recruited by Section 31, where he was openly gay, and his partner was an unjoined Trill named Carew.
Oh,
Oh.
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a good book. It was I forget the name of the authors. I think I might have the book here with me. I don't know where it is right now, but yeah, one of the two authors is also gay, so makes sense for a gay author to write about a gay character. So on that, but I mean, back I say I Loki when I saw this movie when I was 20, I had a low key crush on Hawk. I was kind of bummed that he got. I was kind of bummed he got assimilated at the end, but on that,
Yeah, yeah. It was pretty dumb about seeing what his final conclusion was, but
but
it,
yeah, that was the one thing I was going to mention earlier. I had to drive over 30 miles to see this movie opening weekend because even though my
ooh,
hometown got that sneak release of Generations just 2 years before, did not get
Hmm.
First Contact opening weekend. I had to drive to Moscow to go or Pullman, one of the two, to go see it.
wow, wow.
And,
I mean,
and not Moscow, Russia, Moscow, Idaho.
yes, I know where Moscow, Idaho is.
Yeah,
I've seen it on maps.
yeah, but it's like some people say you went to Russia to go see a movie. And I was like, no.
A lot of our cities and towns are named after a lot of European countries and
Hmm.
European towns and stuff. I mean,
Yeah, but back in the day, it's just like, yeah, that's Moscow. Moscow's in Russia, but even now they're pronouncing it Moscow over there.
yeah, yeah. Getting back to the,
Yeah, get back to the
when they
movie.
was talking about when the Enterprise came through, and they was they destroyed the sphere. As y'all pointed out earlier, they destroyed the sphere. No
Well,
one
before
really
you,
caught.
good night, Paige.
Take care, Paige.
Helen.
Right page.
Riker was he gave a status report on the battle damage assessments and stuff. Long range sensors are down, their shields are down. I didn't really think about that and stuff and everything until by the time we got to realize that's how the Borg got onto the Enterprise. They took that advantage and stuff like just a small group of number of Borgs was able to be transported without them detected. I'm like, that's how the Borg always stays a step ahead of, like, I guess you could say, the Starfleet or the Federation. Because if they was able to uh, trick them and get on board their ship undetected, that kept this. You was wondering, so if the Borg is destroyed, what's the point? What's gonna be the rest of the movie and stuff? This is still all Act One, going into Act Two. You know, and you thinking it's like, well, this is Act Two. What's gonna happen and stuff? I was just a little puzzled when I remember seeing this in the beginning, but I was like, that's just too easy. I felt destroying that sphere was just a little too easy. The Borg got something up their sleeves, you know.
Oh yeah.
And sure enough they did. And that storyline, how they show that, there was on the ground, they had a Waity on the ground, and then Picard was, dealing with things up on the ship. I like that, duality of, trying to, make things work in different, perspective.
Yeah.
See, I kind of want to know though, saying, I mean, when Data first said that they arrived at the latter half of the 21st century, what what mathematical computations did he do? Maybe it's just a Data thing for him to say
Yes,
exactly that they showed up on April 4th, 2063.
I think
There
he
was
said,
another flashback moment for me to Star Trek 4, by the way.
you
Uh-oh.
know what? I think he said, given the radio isotopes in the atmosphere, I guess he used that in the decay rate. The sensors and the computer was able to calculate it, real quickly based on
Mhm.
the radiation in the atmosphere, to give them a pinpoint position of, what time that they're in and stuff and everything. That's what I'm assuming, because it makes more logical sense that, the sensors can, detect, radio decay rate.
Well, yeah, but I
Mhm.
mean the long range sensors were offline. They only had short range, but there was still a bit skewy. So at first they could only detect that, so they made an educated guess, and then obviously there were the rest of the crew were trying to get systems back online behind the scenes. And obviously when once they've destroyed the I know I said cube, um, sphere, and it was discovered that they were firing on a missile complex in Montana. That rang bells with Picard
Yeah.
straight away. That's when it was just like, I need the date, the exact date. And you know,
And what do y'all think about
it was
600
shocking.
million killed? Wouldn't you, as our world population is like, what, 8, 9 billion people? And after the end of the Third World War, you would think that number would be higher than just 600 million. You would think it'd be like, at least 3 billion.
No, it was 600 million were dead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're good. I thought that number would have been like at least higher, like at least 1 billion, if not
Hmm.
more.
Yeah. Thought that too when I heard that.
But that was just me. I was just thinking, that number kind of seems small. Not saying that, I want to see that many of our, of human beings
No.
Yeah.
annihilated and stuff and everything. But it's just like, I mean, given what they said about the Third World War, it sounded like, humans barely able to, come back from it with, a small number. Not saying that they had a big number, but they recovered from it, tremendously. You know, that was just my little insight on that, like, particular thing. But I'm glad you
But
put
yeah,
that out there,
honestly,
Dr. Long.
honestly, when I was sat there, like really in the, 'cause I was like, by the time they destroyed the Borg cube, when I first saw this movie, I was leaning forward like this, like watching the TV, and I was like fully enthralled, And then when Data said April 4th, 2063, and then Picard said the day before First Contact, I'm just like, oh my god, I shared my birthday with First Contact. And even though I knew nothing about Star Trek apart from, TOS, it, I had no idea that it was a first contact day. I didn't even know what it meant, but I was just like, I was literally bouncing up and down on my street. I share my birthday with first contact, and you know, my I was getting very strange looks from my mother. But yeah, I was just like, this was so meant to be. It was like fate. I share my birthday with First Contact Day. This was the movie that made me fall in love with Trek, and they say everything happens for a reason, and I truly believe that. And
In the
I was
stars,
literally
literally.
bouncing. Well, yeah, I was literally bouncing off the walls.
Oh, Phil, I like that.
Yeah.
Do you know,
Yeah,
I do remember going to the cinema and seeing it. Unfortunately, the cinema that I saw it in, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but there wasn't many people in it. And it was sometime within the first couple of weeks it was out. Maybe it was a little bit later. I don't know. But I remember because the one before this was Seven. It was Generations.
hmm
I remember feeling kind of a little let down by that one. It felt like at first it didn't feel. It felt like a big episode. The only thing that felt maybe kind of cinematic was the ship crashing, but other than that, it just kind of felt like even the way it was shot and the way there wasn't anything kind of dynamic about it. But I remember going to see first, and I heard really positive things, so I was really looking forward to seeing it. And I have to say, it was the first Star Trek movie in a while that felt very cinematic. Like when they came on the bridge, it was all completely different. This was like a new looking bridge because it was changed from that was the first. And they didn't make, the only thing was they didn't make most movies when they introduce the ship, it's a big kind of spectacle moment that they introduce the new, like when the Enterprise
yeah.
in the TOS movies, it was this
hmm
just like boop, there it was. So I kind of thought it was a little bit like, oh, there's the new, I guess that's the new ship. But they didn't make a big spectacle of that, but they really got right into the story. It was almost like, we're not going to waste time doing that.
Yeah.
Let's just get into it. And from there, I remember thinking they just kept moving. And I was sitting like on the edge of my seat, and it just still felt very grand to me. And that, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but the entrance of the Borg Queen was so, I
hmm
was like, wow, that's cool. But it was the first time in a while I was like, I really felt like I was enjoying this cinematic experience of like a Star Trek movie. So
Yeah.
it was
Well, that's why a lot of people tout that First Contact the best of the bunch for the next gen, because again, Insurrection also felt very like an extended episode. I mean,
And
it
that's
had
the sad
great
part.
moments and whatnot, but yeah, it felt like an episode again.
Both Generations and First Contact, even not First Contact, but Generations and Insurrection. A lot of fans, there's mixed feelings about, like, people about that, because I have heard, throughout, watching others on YouTube, and some people, say, well, it was all right. It wasn't my favorite. I didn't like this. I didn't like that and stuff. You know, I guess the writers at that time, they was going back and forth and seeing, what the audience, what their fans, will, like and stuff and everything. Of
Sure.
course, they had a hit, they had a somewhat, not a hit with Generation, but they had a hit with First Contact. With, uh, Insurrection. And then, I have heard mixed messages about Nemesis too. There are some people who will like it, some people don't. Some people who are on the fence say, I like some things, I don't like some things. But
Mm.
you're right, Phil. That you're not the first, Star Trek fans who felt that this movie, really delivered to them, that they want to see the TNG characters
Yeah.
did. That they want to see the TNG characters like they saw the TOS when they had their movies,
Yeah.
come up on the screen, because people was hoping, let's see if we can get these guys to get like 5, 6 movies just like the TOS. Unfortunately, by the early 2000s, Star Trek, people say it was a dying franchise.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And you
sorry.
see, I have very different feelings on the TNG movies because, well, of all the Star Trek movies, I only like them from Generations. And in all honesty, Generations, as much as I love that movie, I just couldn't stand watching Kirk in it. I really couldn't. And I was so freaking happy when he fell off that cliff. And I'm just like, yeah, he's dead. I actually cheered when that happened. Like, yes, he's finally popped his clogs. And I was, yeah, yeah. You laugh at me, Dave. You laugh.
So I
But,
know. We all know,
but
but
yeah,
I just
and then
still.
obviously, First Contact was the movie that did it for me. But straight after First Contact, I saw Insurrection, and I adore that movie. It's, in a way, even though there's a hell of a lot going on, it's quite a chilled out, laid back movie for the most part. And then there's like really intense bits, and then it peters out and it's a bit more chilled. And I like that mix. And it's something different as well. Because, I mean, the only time that a duckline mission has been mentioned, or that I'm aware of anyway, is that episode where there was those the that they were like distant relatives of the Vulcans or something.
The Mintalkins?
The Mentalkins.
Yeah, and that was the only other time, to my knowledge, that we've actually seen any form of like duckline mission. Um, because they were being studied by Starfleet, like the Baku. So I liked that link to like Starfleet, like their missions, how they observe other species that are less technologically advanced. And
Mhm.
I mean, that people hate on that movie so much, but there's a lot of depth to it that people don't see. The same as First Contact. There's a lot more depth to this movie than people realize because of how much action there is, the life or death scenarios. But there is so much depth. It and the same with Nemesis as well. So many people hate on that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I cry at that movie because of Data. But there is so much depth, and that movie is probably one of the most psychological Star Trek movies there is. And I see that depth, and that's why I love Nemesis. That's why I love Insurrection. And the depth of the movie started with First Contact, in my opinion, because I mean, obviously we'll get to it later, but we basically see in this movie everything that Picard's been holding back. So many people say, "Oh, that's very out of character for Picard," and Picard would never do that. And like, whoa, hold on a minute. Yeah, there's reasons why he lost his shit, but we will discuss that later because we're not up to that yet. But
Yeah, but what
um,
I want to talk right now
Yeah.
is probably the best part of the entire movie. Drunk Troy.
I knew you was gonna say that.
That's like what one part of the movie I can say it almost like right on saying it's a culture. I'm just trying to blend in.
oh, do you know what? If I'd have thought on when even though I wasn't actually drunk, I should have got really drunk on Saturday night, and I should have recorded myself doing a Troy. I should have. I really
You
should
know
have.
what?
It's
What made me laugh too is, you know, he wouldn't. She basically said he wouldn't talk to her unless she had something called
3 shots of
tequila.
something called tequila. Just
I,
it took
I was
3
like, they
shots of
didn't have
something
tequila
just
in the future.
I just find out he's right here.
They didn't have
Say,
tequila in the future.
It was her line about there was something about time that made me laugh.
Time. This is no time to argue about time. We don't
we
have
don't
the
have
time.
the
And
time.
then like hair flip. What was I saying?
What was
Saying,
I saying?
saying I am not.
And she said, I've been trying to keep his hands off.
Spent the
I was
last
like,
20 minutes. Yeah, I spent the last 20 minutes trying to keep it silence on me. So don't go
So
criticizing my
don't
counseling
criticizing my
technique.
counseling technique. It's the
oh,
primitive culture.
And, and
I'm
just
just
the way she
trying
just
to blend in.
and the way
it
she
blended all right.
but right there at the end when Cochran's getting the jukebox to work again, she's just face down, passed out, and Riker's like, "Oh fuck."
I just love it as well. I just love it as well. If you are looking for my professional
So,
opinion as
yeah,
ship
shit.
counselor, he's
He's
nuts.
nuts. Be sure to note
I'll
that
be sure
one
to note
wrong.
that in my logs.
But right after that, I was talking with Katie backstage about it. One of the glaring editing differences is because down on the planet, it's nighttime, but then when we get to the shot of the Enterprise in orbit over Earth, it's freaking daytime in America. Which is like,
Yeah,
whoops.
Yeah.
And it's
yeah.
not the it's of course that's not the
Right.
first like
Right.
orbiting mistake. There's like
Yeah.
some discontinuities with when the Borg went through the vortex. They was going over the west coast, but when the Enterprise followed through, they were like over the Atlantic.
Hmm.
So I know the Earth spins pretty fast, but I don't think it spins that.
Yeah.
But then of course one of the big ones that everyone on the internet was talking about, which later in the movie when Picard opens up the window to show Lily Australia, where the frick is New Zealand? It's nowhere. Did the
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big
because
flubber too.
that
Yeah,
was a what?
maybe it sunk in the war. I don't know.
Well, yes, it was. Paris,
Maybe.
Tom Paris was there with the New Zealand penal colony not just a few years before,
Yeah.
so something cataclysmic would have happened.
Yeah.
That's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
But
Oh, I like the little discontinuities.
yeah, but yeah, one little note that I that I put on there that gave the movie a PG-13 rating is Data snapping the Borg drone's neck. That was the one thing that pushed it from PG to PG-13.
Before we talk about that, can I run something by you guys real quick because
Sure.
we skipped over a scene. So y'all remember when Picard asked, well, he ordered LaForge with engineering team to beam down to the surface and stuff to begin working on the warp ship, and he left a gentleman named Paul Porter in charge, and he said it's
Yep.
getting a little hot in here, Paul. So that same actor, and I don't know if Katie probably will, I don't know if she probably remembers this because she's seen uh, Stargate SG-1, but he played it. He played a guy in Stargate SG-1 in a late season. I think it was season 10 of SG-1,
Hmm.
and I was just wanting to put that little thing together. It's like, oh, look at this. This guy, he was in Stargate SG-1, but he, several years before, he was in Star Trek, and he played Paul Porter as, his name goes and stuff. And it was so interesting to see just how that scene set up when, LaForge was like, it's getting a little hot in here. To me, that stuff, I was like, they already got some sort of, something was going on. I knew, I knew the Borg was behind this. I was like, I knew the Borg was behind it and stuff because they thought they destroyed him, but their environmental system was kind of going crazy and stuff. And then Paul was like, oh my god, it's the entire deck. He couldn't get it under control and stuff. And then when he got through the Jeffries tube, and he was asking his colleague, is anybody working maintenance in that section? She said, not that I'm aware of. And then when you heard him screech, and I was like, yeah, I knew, just the way he, screamed and like screeched when you didn't see it, but you
Yeah.
heard him, and you just like, oh, that's a horrible way to die.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I forgot one scene earlier on in there when Data and Picard were in the
Mr. Silo?
The
in
silo.
the silo. Yeah, thank you. And say they're touching the ship, and Picard saying it makes it seem more real, and then Data's like, and it doesn't seem more real to me than before. Then 20-year-old me, it just right over my head when Troy says, "Would you three like to be alone?"
Yeah, I absolutely love that.
I was just like,
But
"Where's the third person?" Then older me is like,
yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that because it's so funny. But carrying on from that as well, like when they start getting shot at by Lily, um, and Data's just like, Captain, I believe I can handle this, and he just jumps down, and she shoots him, and then he just turns around and he's just like, greetings. And it's
just so matter of factly, she's like, "Hello."
But
Oh.
then, not long after that, there's another editing mistake that I mentioned to Dave before the show. Um, and when there's the scene where Beverly is checking Lily, and she says that they're all going to have to be inoculated because of radiation. Um, from is it the damaged throttle assembly?
Yeah.
Yeah, the throttle, the rim throttle
Um,
assembly.
when she inoculates Picard, and then she goes to inoculate herself. Just as that happens, the camera angle shifts, and she's still inoculating Picard. So that was a bit of
Oh.
Editing boo
an
boo.
editing mistake. Yeah, because she'd already put the hypo spray to her arm when the camera angle shifted, and when the camera angle shifted, the hypo spray was still on Picard. So that was like an editing mistake there. But um, but no, I mean, I'm I I love that scene, but I also like after the scene that you mentioned, Travis, when Paul basically got assimilated, and then she went in the Jeffries tube after him, and many screams. Picard down on the planet, and he had the Borg in his head, and
Yep.
like the look on Deanna's face was just like, "Holy shit, what the hell is going on?"
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like Data and I are attending to the ship.
Yeah, because he asked Worf, he contacted Worf on the ship, and he was just saying they were experiencing environmental, some environmental, their environmental system is acting up and stuff, but that's not it and stuff. Worf kind of dismissed it,
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
he was like, me and Data returning to the ship and stuff and everything else, and then he gave Riker command of the away team, and stuff. And then that's, I really started like, yeah, that's, this is going to take part on the ship and on the surface.
yeah. You see, but one thing that I love about this, and I love about Star Trek, is that they do the freaking temperature right.
Oh yeah.
They work in Celsius. They work in Celsius. They do the temperature right. I am so proud of Star Trek for that. Um,
Never thought about
yeah,
that.
but yeah, it's been this big thing throughout Star Trek. They work in Celsius, even though it's an American-made show. All the Star Treks have been American-made, and yet they work in Celsius. Yeah, all right, fair enough. They work in Kelvin as well when it comes to like outside temperatures in space and that. But you
Took them
know,
long enough, but they got there.
well, yeah. I mean, it's like in one of the episodes of in Next Generation. I can't remember if it's Beverly or Deanna. They they get a glass of water replicated, and I'm sure it's Beverly, and she's like, water 3 Celsius, and I'm just like, yes, you're doing temperature right, Star Trek, and I love them all the more for it because it. That's how we Brits work. We work in Celsius. So again, I guess I love my connection to Trek
Well,
But
yeah,
we
with
because
domestic, we don't even do that.
temperatures.
yeah, there's only 3 countries in the world that still use the imperial system: the U.S., Liberia, and Myanmar.
Yeah,
And but
I
like in
mentioned that
England, though, it says it's kind of mixed. Sometimes they do
yeah,
metric, but sometimes they do imperial.
And a lot of us Americans, we don't know anything about the Celsius scale or anything like that, about, the metric system and stuff. We don't know how to,
I know. This is how bad it is. This is how bad it is. I have got my Samsung weather app, like my Samsung weather on my home screen. Then I've got BBC weather. I have one on Celsius and one on bloody Fahrenheit, so I know what you lot are talking about.
No, but I've gotten better at it. But I know here in the States, not to go too off track, but we did try to convert to the metric system back in the late 70s, and it was just an unmitigated
Yeah,
disaster.
I heard about that. Yeah.
We just pushed it. Was same here, but we just kind of pushed it through anyways. Like I remember when we started learning it in school. I
Yeah.
was very young in the 70s, but yeah, it was just sort of pushed through. We're doing it this way anyways. Get used to it. But and then here we are now. We're still doing our gasoline and liters.
Yeah, I was saying, and when I did Knowledge Bowl in junior high, there was the question that how many how many kilometers per hour are you driving if you're driving 55 miles? And I'd even let the question get in. I buzzed in and said 88 because that was the right answer, of course, because where my grandparents grew up north of Seattle, there's a ferry that came in from Canada, so they had the sign 55 mph, 88 kph. So I remember that from when I was younger. So it's like I knew the answer, but my team just looked at me like, "How the fuck did he know?"
But you pick up these little things, don't you? You pick up these little gems of knowledge, and you never think it's going to be used, and then all of a sudden, bam, you've won a contest, and it's just one of those. You think that all this like what's known as like useless pieces of knowledge that you pick up, even from the world of Star Trek, you pick up this useless knowledge, and yet at some point it comes in handy.
Oh yeah, I agree. And that was one time it came in handy for me. But
Right.
back to
Yeah, I was gonna say right back to the movie. You know what piece of knowledge that I seen that came to Data when he locked the computer out with a fracture encryption code to keep the Borg for accessing their data. I was
Mhm.
like, oh, they learned quickly to isolate their computer and keep the Borg out, and the Borg could not break Data's isolation code. I was surprised at that.
Yeah, but Data is an entity unto himself. I mean,
Yeah.
he said it was highly unlikely that the Borg would be able to break it. Not that it was impossible, but he, what was it? He isolated it with a fractal encryption code.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Um, um, I mean, I love that scene because you get to see his speedy fingers, and it's not often that you get to see that, and
Tasha
it's
Yar
not.
did.
Well, yes, yes, yeah, I'm sure she did.
Uh,
But I mean, you got to see Data's speed in that episode, The Naked Now. Because he was putting the isolinear chips back in, so you did get to kind of see his speed
Yep.
there. And you've seen him speed read and things like that, but that was like a really good shot of how fast he actually is.
uh,
And
yeah,
I think that was
And
like
you know what? And
beautiful writing.
that begs the question: how fast did Tasha Yar get off?
I'm saying, did Data have a vibrate mode? And who? Oh, we broke Katie.
Oh no, Casey, she's broken again.
Dave, so it's fair. Dave had his question.
Yep, yep. Sorry, get off script. Speedy fingers.
Yeah, same. But yeah, we're almost like halfway through the movie, and we weren't even introduced to the Queen yet.
She
Yeah,
came in act two, didn't
And
she?
what an introduction.
What's that?
She
And
came
what
in
an
act two.
introduction.
Oh
yeah.
yeah, that was a great introduction. But before that, of course, was I'd say probably at least half of the audience at the theater when I saw it, a collective groan. Cochrane's, "You're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek."
Yes,
It
yes.
only took 30 years for the franchise to come up with that line, but it's like, yeah.
Was I the only one?
It's cheesy,
I liked
it's
it.
cliche, but I freaking love that, because
Oh,
even
I
though
wrote.
he invented warp drive, he's still like naive in a lot of ways, and he was just absolutely gobsmacked with everything, and it and even though it was cheesy and it had to be done at some point, it really did, and I think that they snuck it in there quite well
Oh
with
yeah.
Cochrane's naivety, and some people do actually talk like that, um, but now one thing that I like before we get on to Her Majesty, there is one thing that I do want to bring up, and that is, do you know when they start heading towards engineering?
Hmm.
They stop outside engineering and they end up getting into a fight with the Borg.
Right.
To my knowledge, that is the only time we see Data using a phaser with his right hand.
Hmm.
Oh.
Because Brent Spiner is left-handed, and if you
Yes.
go back through all of Next Gen, even though Data has his equipment, his phaser and his tricorder on the same side as everyone else, he always takes his phaser out like that, not like that,
Interesting. All right.
because he is left-handed.
Yeah.
Even though he's an android and he shouldn't, Brent Spiner is left-handed, but in that scene, Data uses his phaser with his right hand. And to my knowledge, that's the only time we ever see it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay. I
see,
didn't even
but
take this one.
I
Jeff
never
brought it
knew.
up. Data got to use his peen again, positrically, and gore direction and nerds.
I fucking love you, Jeff.
Oh my God.
Like I said, it's 3 weeks in a row. Sex has become a topic of conversation on the podcast.
Oh,
I'm loving it.
God. Oh, may the gods give me strength for you lot.
But go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
No, say there's another editing mistake not long after that when it was great Picard's little speech to Lily about how humanity has evolved in up in the 24th century. Don't need money. We do this to better ourselves. Blah blah blah. And then of course Lily's first reaction was, "You don't get paid."
Yeah.
but but when Picard's starting to formulate a plan, you look down the hall. Number one, the holodecks doors are like normal doors. They're not the big like whoosh doors that the D had.
Mm.
But when we first saw the door, it said holosuite, which I thought was interesting that the starships are calling them holosuites. I thought that was a DS9 thing
Yeah, I did
specifically.
too. Oh yeah.
But when they went in there and then the Borg start pulling the door open, it says holodeck, and it was not even close to the
Oh.
same door label as it was just 30 seconds before.
I think
Yeah,
that was a deliberate mistake that they made to tie things more in with DS9. I do honestly think that was a deliberate mistake to see if the fans had noticed. But
it
speaking
took
of
me
the Borg
20
breaking into
plus
the
years to notice
holodeck,
that.
but speaking of the Borg breaking into the holodeck, the maitre d',
Felix.
Neelix.
Oh
Y'all,
right.
for-
Yes.
y'all
Yes.
forgot about the doctor,
Yeah, he was there too.
the
I'm a
sick bay.
doctor, not a doorstop.
The
Yeah.
Enterprise sick bay was just a redress use of the Voyager sick bay.
Yeah, they kind of made some
Yeah.
cosmetic changes, but it's pretty much the same. But Crusher's a little dig on the doctor. Sing a song, tell a story. That's exactly what the Voyager EMH evolved into doing.
Yeah. Do a
Oh.
dance, tell a story, I don't care. Just give us a few seconds.
And then
Yeah,
Lily
I
got
It,
love
separated
that.
from them.
say, but yeah, that EMH was just thinking on his feet. It's like Starfleet records indicate that Borg implants cause severe skin irritation. May I suggest an analgesic cream?
Yeah, I love that. Because Robert Picardo, I'm sorry, but I've got to give him a shout out on this because I love that guy to pieces. I follow him on Instagram, and he is an amazing person. He's an amazing actor, and he plays the EMH so well. However, like whether it be just that short little scene in First Contact or whether it be in Voyager, it it was just so beautiful to see him in this milk. That was my first introduction to the EMH as well, because I'd not seen Voyager or anything. I didn't see First Contact until I think it was it 2001?
Oh wow.
So like Voyager was well into it by then. I think it had ended
Oh,
by then, or it was
in
about to end.
2001, it did. Yeah.
It did. It did.
So yeah, that was like my first introduction to the EMH, and then when I watched Voyager, I'm like, oh my god, and I recognized Neelix's voice as well from just that little scene that he was in. Is it Ethan Phillips?
Yeah, Ethan
Hmm.
Phillips.
And
Yeah.
just that little scene, I'm like, oh, I recognize your voice. And it actually wasn't long after that I watched First Contact, because it was like my birthday, and I always watch it on my, well, apart from this year, I always watch it on my birthday. It became a tradition, and yeah, and that's how I figured it out. But yeah, I do like how because sometimes they do make these deliberate mistakes, like Holosuite, Holodeck. They do make these deliberate mistakes to see if fans will notice.
Yeah.
Like the thing with the Millennium Falcon, they wanted to know if the fans would notice. Just other little things as well. I mean, I can't remember any off the top of my head, but oh, excuse me. It's been a long weekend. But
You do.
I like to see some of these like deliberate mistakes that they make, like what Dave said about the Holosuite and Holodeck.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, that's the first time I noticed it. I was like, wait a second, and I hit rewind. It's like, oh, hello. But but that, I mean, of course, they like Ruby. She say, watch your caboose and dump the broad, and just the shock on Lily's face. Just the, I mean, for someone that's just been thrust into 24th century technology, she took it in stride for the most part.
What was her line that she said? If you would have you when he was showing her, Earth from the other side, and he was like, if you would have fired this, you would have killed me or something, or vaporized.
It's my first ray gun.
The
Yeah.
way she said it was just so. It was so human, a human being at the time.
Oh yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
anything. I just started pushing buttons and I wouldn't know what to do.
You want to give me answer? I'm gonna start pushing buttons. Picard's like, okay, just back off, slow your roll, woman.
do you know what? Can I just tell you a little something about this movie?
Hmm.
Do you know when Lily first sees the Borg and she screams?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when I was about 15 years old, which was about a year after I first saw this movie, I used to listen to a radio station, and they would have this competition, and they would play just one tiny thing from a movie, and the listeners would call in, and whoever got it right, they won a prize. And there was one where it was a scream. Everybody thought it was the screams from Pretty Woman, where she goes to get the necklace and he snaps it shut. And as soon as I heard that scream, I went, that is not Pretty Woman. That is from Star Trek First
Oh,
Contact. And I actually called in, and I said that I know exactly what movie this is from. I know exactly what scene and what character screams. And they're like, okay, I said it's Star Trek First Contact, and it's the character Lily when she first sees the Borg. And they're just like, that is probably the most detailed answer we have ever had. And that is correct. But the only problem was I couldn't claim the prize because I was under 18.
Oh no.
Oh, oh.
Yeah, but they actually spent 5 minutes talking about the movie First Contact, and were like, "I take it you're a Trekkie." Yes, as I became a Trekkie because of this movie. Um, um, and yeah, so we had a 5 minute conversation about that. But yeah, I couldn't claim the prize because I was under 18, so I was really gutted about that. 'Cause it was like, I think it was about 2.5 grand that the prize had got up to. And I'm just like, no, I'd have given that straight to my mother, But yeah, so that scream from the movie was actually used on a radio station, and I got it a year into being a Trekkie.
That's pretty neat.
But yeah, definitely not Swedish. The Borg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like Borg sounds Swedish, and she sees it. Definitely not Swedish.
But I love Lily. I really do. I mean, when she was brought round in sick bay, she was still out of it. She was just like, "What the hell is going on? There's these strange people, strange lights, a strange room, And then
what they're wearing, I mean, their outfits and stuff. She was like, I've never seen anything like this. She was just so out of place and stuff, and she reacted really like terrified. Even though they looked human, but she still acted very terrified of just seeing people.
Well, yeah, and she's got some balls. She really has. She is literally the only person who was willing to stand up to Picard. I mean,
later on, she totally did.
Yeah, she started their relationship with Picard confrontational, and it ended up that they formed a bond.
Worf called him out on it, and he even said the exact same thing that Starfleet was afraid. He said when Starfleet Command was afraid, and it literally happened. Worf called him out on, and he basically kicked him off the bridge, but he basically told Picard, you're letting your personal feelings affect your, clouding your judgment and stuff, but
yeah.
But as Crusher said, once the captain made up his mind, you don't go against it. The captain has a final decision.
And she's like, "Fuck that."
Well, yeah, and I mean, even Worf stood up to Picard in a sense, but even Worf don't have the balls to do what Lily did. Because he's used to the command structure, he's used to that respect, whereas Lily, she's just been forced into this world, and there's no command structure.
Yeah.
Where she's from, and she's just like, screw this for a game of cards, and that entire scene with Picard and Lily is probably one of the most psychologically intense scenes in Trek, because Picard has always been put together. To be quite honest, he's probably the most put together captain out of all the Trek series. How he presents himself. We've only ever really seen him lose his shit once, and that was after he was assimilated and he went back to Earth, and he ended up having a bit of a scuffle with his brother, and then he got really emotional in Generations because of the loss of his nephew and that. But that is the first. I think that is the first time we saw him full on lose his shit. And
well, yeah, on that extreme, yeah, saying with family, we saw the vulnerable side of him where he finally broke down. But yeah, this is like I'm pissed off as hell.
Well, yeah, it's one thing to get emotional after such a traumatic event or losing a family member, you know, but the way he lost his shit there, that had been building up over like 6 years. Um, you know, he wouldn't have done that with anybody else because nobody else would even Beverly, you know, nobody else would be willing to challenge him like that. Whereas Lily, she just didn't give a crap. And she wasn't under his command, so she could basically say
Right.
anything she wanted to
She
him.
just met him, just
Uh,
she barely knew him, so she really wasn't in a position to. Yeah.
What was
well,
that
yeah,
line?
and she was just
What was
thinking
that
about
line?
what was best.
What was that line between them? She said something about, she didn't, he didn't even try to say instant Lynch because when he shot when on the holodeck, instant Lynch was one of the Borgs that he shot and killed, you know,
One of
using
your men.
holographic bullets. And what happened, between him and Lily in that thing, she's like, I've seen people murder each other all the time, and they get a thrill from it, you know. And she said you almost seem like you're enjoying it. And he basically said to her, we have evolved, we evolved beyond this kind of thing stuff. And then, she said bullshit. That's what she said.
Hmm.
I saw it when you saw instant, when you killed instant
You're
and
not.
stuff. And he said, there's no way to save him and everything. And she said you basically was enjoying killing him, even though you knew
Yeah.
it was a member of your crew.
Well, yeah, where was your sensibility then?
Hmm.
You know, and you see, I actually found it really interesting that she brought up Moby Dick because Patrick Stewart was in Moby Dick.
Yes, he was.
And you know, when she said like, yeah, Captain Ahab has to go hunt his whale, you
And
know,
Picard's like, he's like, what? And it's like it's like you do have books in the 24th century, do you? So that's a big old.
Yeah, he reads books.
well, yeah, and then you know they really get into it, and she's just like, Jean Luc, blow up the damn ship, and then he really does lose it, and he proper flips his lid, and it was for me, it was beautiful to see because he like the first time I saw it, obviously I'd only ever known the shit track. Um, but I didn't know the backstory properly of the next gen crew, what happened to Picard. I only knew what I knew from this movie. But I could tell, even at a young age, I could tell that Picard was very put together, but he was holding a lot in. And Patrick Stewart played that beautifully.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Hmm.
the more it went on, the more I saw how stressed Picard was was becoming, and how antsy and edgy and abrupt. And I knew that he was going to lose his shit, and I'm just like, he needs to proper blow up in order to get his brain braining properly.
Hmm.
And when he did, and he had that release, it was just like calm. And then when Lily says, "See you around, Ahab," and he started reciting the quote from Moby Dick, that it triggered when she says, "See you around, Ahab," that triggered something in him. It is his logical brain, and nobody else could have triggered that in him. And I found, as intense as that scene was, and as heartbreaking as it was a beautiful scene at the same time. And after seeing all of Next Gen, and obviously, like, best of both worlds. And, you know, I understood a lot more of obviously of what Picard went through and how he carried it over all of those years. And it was inevitable that that was going to happen when he faced them again. It was just a matter of time. And I was actually so proud of Picard in that scene because he let it all out before he faced them.
Well, I got a question for you guys. I got a premise. And when they was in engineering, well, outside of engineering, and the Borg was giving them, resistance and stuff, and they was retreating back to Deck 15. Uh, Somebody screamed out, Captain, help me. And the captain looked at him, and he took his phaser and shot him. Put yourselves in that. This is a question for anybody who's in the chat room thing. Would you guys have shot your crewmate or let them continue to get assimilated, even though you know that they're going to still be alive, but they're going to be a drone? Mm-hmm. So either you kill them yourself, or you let them become a drone.
Yeah. I'd have done the same thing as Picard did.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially like with Ensign Lynch. I mean, he just pumped him full of lead, just like that person is gone. Even though like Picard survived, is because he was able to fight it. But yeah, he's just like
once a drone.
Think of it as like. Go ahead.
I was gonna say once a drone, you become a drone. You never really go back. Is that what you're trying to say?
I think so, yeah, because I mean, Picard still hears them, even though he's no longer assimilated. But just he knows what they're going through. It's going to be a tough journey. Just put them out of their misery, essentially, before it is assisted suicide. Essentially, they're dead. So just kill them now quickly, instead of just living eternity as
basically,
a drone.
Die by your hands, by your by somebody who respects you or something. Mm-hmm.
Katie?
As now, obviously, Picard here in the Borg makes a lot more sense since we saw Picard season 3. But I can't remember, but as far as I'm aware, Picard was never fully assimilated. There was still a tiny sliver of his individuality left over because of what the Borg wanted him for. Right. And it's like he said to the Queen as well, you wanted a human being with a mind of his own. And now, if that's the case, then he wasn't fully assimilated. He was still under the full, more or less full control of the Queen. But she needed him to have that sliver of individuality and emotion and humanity, to be a counterpart and to try and bridge that gap between the Borg and humanity. And so the fact that he wasn't fully assimilated is a really big thing. And I believe that that's why he recovered so well from that. And it's like when it's kind of similar to, but not the same, but similar to when Janeway, B'Elanna, and Tuvok were assimilated. They had no blockers on. So that, yes, their bodies were assimilated, but their minds remained intact. But obviously Tuvok succumbed to the collective. Janeway and B'Elanna didn't. But I think it was kind of like a similar something similar how Picard was assimilated. They're very different. It was a similar kind of scenario. He still had that sliver of individuality because that is what the Queen needed. She needed to understand humanity. But in order to do that, she couldn't just assimilate it. She had to experience it through Picard. And, you know, that. And then obviously the fact that all these years down the line, he can still hear them. That's all explained in season 3 of Picard. And as it turns out, he doesn't have aromatic syndrome. You know, it was this funny brain thing that the Borg did to him. And obviously that was passed on to his son. But I always found it really interesting that he could still hear them because Seven of Nine couldn't. You know, yeah, and I'm just like, obviously the Borg have done something to him because when I saw Voyager and Seven of Nine was liberated from the collective, then obviously like throughout there was like other drones that had been liberated as well, and then he couldn't hear the Borg. I was instantly like, the Borg have done something to Picard that's different to a usual assimilation, and I believe that it has something to do with, obviously, yeah, maybe a longer term plan, but also the fact that he wasn't fully assimilated. And then when it came to Picard season 3, and all this was going on with Jack, and what he kept seeing. I mean, I think from very early on, I called the Borg, and I said that it wasn't aromatic syndrome that he had; it was something to do with the Borg that had been passed on from Picard, and that's when the aromatic syndrome came into my head, and what the Borg did to him had been masked somehow. And that's why I could still hear them. But because I already had it in my head that the Borg had done something more than just assimilate it in like Best of Both Worlds, and then obviously seeing like watching First Contact again and Seven of Nine not being able to hear them, it was quite evident that something very different had happened to Picard when he was assimilated.
Can I throw something out that I don't think anybody ever paid attention to, but I noticed this. In Picard's time that he spent assimilated, it was only 6 days. B'Elanna, Tuvok, and Janeway, when they was assimilated, they was only assimilated for several hours. If I'm not mistaken, they was on that Borg, the tactical sphere, for several hours. Given, I don't know how long, but it wasn't on that cube for very long. Maybe it's the duration time, the how long you collect you are connected with the collective. Because Picard was only there, he was only there for 6 days. And then they was able to bring him back. Like you said, he wasn't fully assimilated and everything. I think the longer you are assimilated, maybe the period of like the timeline of how short assimilation versus long assimilation. But that goes back to, I started thinking about that, but I was thinking, well, if I subscribe to my own theory about that, then something like uh Seven and what's his name again, Q, because they was assimilated for a long time.
Yeah.
And you remember, shoot, I forgot what Voyage episode it was, but they met a bunch of it was Tuvok, not Tuvok, it was Chakotay and Lieutenant Chapman, Ensign Chapman, and they was responding to a distress call, and they didn't realize they was former Borgs, and you know,
Yeah.
Voyager ended up running
Want
into
to
their teeth.
want to say that was Collective?
Huh?
No, collective is when Manu comes into it.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, I forgot which episode. I know it was in season three. It was in season three. Uh, I don't know.
Let me get
Season
on
three.
IMDb.
Unity, season three,
Unity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unity. And so if I started subscribing to my own theory, I'm thinking, you know, the duration in the see these people, it's like, well, I mean, that knocks it out. That will not blow my theory out of the water when it comes to like, you know, one's long term, you know, being exposed to the board versus someone short term being exposed to the board. Picard was only there for 6 days. He was only aboard for 6 days. Versus how long did 7 and 9 was aboard? Almost 20
18
years.
years. 18 years.
18 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So
And
you
she
start
was
looking at that.
assimilated as a child. But you know what happened when Janeway, B'Elanna, and Tuvok were assimilated? B'Elanna and Janeway were like they were recovering really well, but because the assimilation took hold on Tuvok's mind and he actually became a drone,
Yeah,
he took a lot longer, even though he was only assimilated for a very short period of time. He had a really long recovery, and you know it. I mean, it was quite evident when you put all the pieces together, and I think it kind of helped. I saw things very backwards, in a way, but just putting the pieces together of had been assimilated, the argument, kind of discussion slash argument that he has with Queen in First Contact, the fact that he can still hear the Borg, and yet Seven of Nine, Icheb, Mazati, all of them, they don't still hear him. Obviously the Queen was able to contact Seven of Nine, but that was through a neurotransceiver.
yes.
But this was very different for Picard. And it was quite evident that something else other than assimilation had happened to him. And I think because I looked so deep into stuff and like the psychological elements of it, at first I was just like, oh, he's having a bit of a episode, like maybe flashbacks. But he had no idea that the Borg had transferred over to the ship and yet he could still hear them. So I'm just like, yeah, something has happened to him to make him still hear them. And then the more I learned about the Borg and the assimilation process,
Hmm.
the more it became evident that he really was something special.
I mean, yeah. I mean, everybody. I mean, a lot of us knew if he could still hear the board, he is somewhat still connected with him. You know, I mean, that's a dead giver. But I like how they tie that in. It took many years, and I still like how they tied it in you know, Picard season three. And they, you know, be like, oh, you know, they gave us a final explanation why
Hmm.
and how.
Yeah,
The how is one thing, and the why is another. It's like, and then, you know, we all start seeing, you know, the puzzle pieces, you know, fitting together and stuff. And it was nicely done. That was a nicely done
basically what
arc.
they did with Picard. What they did with Picard was a last resort plan.
And it was an arc. It was like a very interesting story arc for him. It
Yeah.
was a very interesting story arc, you know, that really you know, told it well. That you know, I think a lot of us Star Trek fans are pleased with because you know we've seen from Best of Both Worlds, uh, First Contact, and then you know Picard season three. It really tied it into you know why why can he still hear the board? And there was people had their fan theories and stuff and everything, but like I'm glad they gave it some continuity. The writers gave it some continuity to
Oh yeah, for
a good
sure.
explanation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I do love that. And so many people were complaining, oh, they've done the Borg thing again, with Picard season 3, but the way they did it was genius. Because like you said, Travis, it gave an explanation as to why Picard could still hear them. It explained what was going on with Jack.
Hmm.
And, you know, it tied everything up of what Janeway did to the Borg as
Yes,
well. In
thank you. Thank you. Katie, I'm so glad that you pointed that out. The whole thing too. A lot of people don't talk about that, but yes, we see 79 and Tuvok and they name drop Janeway. But in the last episode, the next was that the next generation, or what was it called? It is Picard. When Picard's talking to the Queen, she said, "You left us poisoned," and just stranded and stuff like that. I'm like, that is nod to Voyager's doing.
yeah,
I was
yeah, Endgame.
so I was just so happy with that.
Yeah, and it came full circle, and they Picard was assimilated and all 359 happened. He could still hear them years later, as we saw in First Contact. And I genuinely do believe that the Queen did this to Picard as like a last resort ditch attempt to assimilate Earth. Um, because obviously in Voyager she wanted to create a biological weapon to detonate in Earth's atmosphere.
Katie, do you remember in Picard season 1 the episode where they went to the artifact, as they call it, but the Borg cube, and they ran into Hugh, and
Yeah,
they needed to get off the cube, and Hugh took them to the Queen's chamber, and the Queen's chamber had something we saw from, and I shouted out when I heard it, a spatial trajector. I was like, no way. The Borg assimilated the Sakarans in season. They were from season 1 of Star Trek Voyager, the Sakarians. They had a spatial trajector that folded the whole thing is so long and everything, but basically it folds space, and they can traject like up to 40,000 light years.
yeah,
And the Borg chamber, as what Hugh said, I think he said, was the last resort for the Queen to survive. She was able to, if the ship is under attack or getting destroyed, something like that, she would just activate the spatial trajector and go through it. That was the last resort that a Queen would
yeah.
have, the spatial trajector. I was just dumbfounded. When you mentioned that, the last resort about Picard, I'm like, you know what? They always have, it seems like Queens always think 2 steps ahead in case they need to make a hastily retreat or escape.
Well, yeah, but what the Queen did to Picard was more than just thinking 2 steps ahead. She didn't just have an ABC plan. She had a full alphabet of plans, and he was
I
like, no, honestly, I mean,
like
like
that.
in Voyager, in was it Dark Frontier? She has 7 of 9 to program the nanoprobe to um to create a warhead that would detonate in Earth's atmosphere to slowly assimilate them like a virus.
Yes.
And I think that was,
Species 5618, human,
yeah,
low cranial
um,
capacity, slow
it
regenerative. No, yeah, I'm sorry.
And I think that that was one of her final plans, because she tried going back in time, it didn't work, and she, just humanity was so resistant. But obviously, when Seven of Nine defected back to Voyager, basically, I think that she was just like, no, we're not going to go down this route anymore. And hearing about the changelings and the Dominion War and everything, I think that possibly changed a lot of things. And it was something that she set up over the course of years. And Picard was basically her end game. And the fact that he had a son, and that was passed on to Jack, she was able to connect with Jack because Picard was no longer human. He was an android, like a next gen kind of android. And so she wasn't able to communicate with Picard. She had to communicate with Jack. And it was very well thought out. The whole oh, excuse me, I'm really tired. Like the whole storyline, the whole story arc of Picard being assimilated, First Contact, and then everything with Voyager, and just involving the changelings in it. Basically, the changelings teaming up with the Borg, and everything was tied up in a neat bow, so to speak. Yes, there were still some unanswered questions, but for the most part, everything was tied up in a neat bow. I will admit, speaking of Her Majesty, when Data is on that bed thingy, is talking to the drones, and he's just like, your attempts to break the encryption codes will not be successful, nor will your attempts to assimilate me into your collective. And then the Queen's voice echoed through that entire room. And I mean, I'm sorry, but Alice will always be my Borg Queen.
You should have heard it at the movie theater back when it came out. It was so crazy to hear it, in surround sound.
Mm-hmm.
But her voice, I've always found is so lovely. I mean, the first thing that I saw her in, I think, I think it was it First Contact that I first saw her in, or did I see her in Dinotopia before? I can't remember. But she was in a miniseries called Dinotopia, and I loved her voice then. But as the Borg Queen, she spoke a bit more regally, and especially when her voice just echoes through that room. Her voice actually, especially when I first ever saw the movie and we first heard her speak, I actually got goosebumps up my arms when I heard her voice, and I'm just like, I cannot wait to meet her. And I was like really wanting it to get going so that I could meet the woman behind this voice. And then when she comes down, like obviously you see her body being assembled and that, and then you see her coming down, and it was just, oh my God, wow. And I was
just
just,
Craig.
this is a beautiful moment right here. This is like a beautiful movie moment, and I actually had to rewind it.
You know, first time I ever saw her, she was in a movie in the early '90s with I don't know his name, but his character that he played was Leo in Charmed, and I believe it was a Stephen King's movie where her and the guy who played Leo, the actor, was a mother and son, and they was giant cats. I can't remember what the movie is, but that's the first time I ever seen her. She played a human that could transform into this giant walking cat. I can't even think of it as stuff right now.
Sleepwalkers.
Thank you. Yes, thank
I
you.
knew,
Thank you.
I knew that was, yeah.
Yes,
That's
I
a
love that movie.
Yeah. I forgot about
sleepwalker.
that.
Yeah, that's the first time I ever saw her sleep. Oh my God. I was just like, I knew I remember seeing her some years before. That's the first time I was like, okay, this is a perfect role for her because she can make a pretty interesting villain.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys. I don't know if this is just like a woman thing or not, but I am so in love with her voice. And do you know what? If she was, if Alice was ever to bring out Ozark, no,
Oh.
Where is this coming from?
oh, jeez, I fucking love you, Zach. Get your ass on the show. Um,
yeah,
but
he is just saying, "Are you
um,
still on?" It's like, yes, we are. This is one of two XL episodes this week that we're talking about the Borg. Saying obviously tonight, and then in 2 weeks we're gonna have Manu Interami on here to talk about Q2. So looking forward to that. Going to
That's
probably
gonna
get a
be
lot of
fun.
trolls on that episode. So we'll just have to
Oh
see what
boy.
develops with that one. But
Oh boy. We
but
gotta make
yeah,
sure we have some good questions for him about that episode, about that particular episode that he worked with Keegan. You know, we got to come up with
yeah.
some really good questions for him.
I am certain, but yeah, I'm working on the graphic for that right now. But you know, we're still talking a lot of Borg, but I want to try and get the conversation back to the movie itself because we had Dwight Schultz come back to portray Reg Parmasley,
Yes.
just Reg being Reg, and I just put a
No.
little awe
Yeah.
next to it. He's like he's just
oh, I love
like
Reg.
he has such heroes. You can't shake my hand. It's like I would totally be him if I was in that position.
And
Do
this
you
is the
know
first
what?
time.
I wouldn't. I
I don't
know this is. I know this sounds really, really awful, but
say.
I have never been like that with a celebrity, and I never would be because they get that all the time. I mean, I understand that it was a really big moment, and he's an engineer, and he was helping to prepare the Phoenix, but it was so sweet coming from Reg. If it had come from anybody else, it'd have been creepy. But it was so sweet coming from Reg, and I honestly thought it was going to dislocate his shoulder.
Hey, but yeah, say Zach, yeah, you're mentioning Katie's getting some echo. I've been noticing that getting a little stronger as the episode progressed. I don't know if mine kind of abated since I moved the microphone back a few inches
I
from me.
I apologize because of my horrible speakers. I've only been able to make out about half of what Katie said.
I wonder if it's
I can hear what she said sometimes. She distorts in and out, but
Yeah,
what about
the
me?
echo kind of overlaps, and I haven't been as like I'm trying to like listen. I'm like, ugh.
Dave, you and Phil coming through pretty clearly.
Okay.
If I turn the audio down about halfway, then I can kind of cancel out part of the echoing, and I actually can hear a little bit better. But I have to turn it down
Yeah,
and
but
then
you
back up.
yeah, you're coming through kind of echoey on my end, Phil.
Am I? Oh,
Yeah. So I don't know.
I think
See,
it's good.
usually when the episode goes longer, that's when the audio issues start.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
But
Yeah, I apologize for the echo. I don't know what's causing it.
but
But
I think
but
it's
yeah,
just
it's all over the place and
saying
stuff.
the whatever this is
What
StreamYard.
I was
yard.
going to ask this to the whole room and everybody, anybody else in chat. What did y'all think about when Jordy was basically he was spilling the beans to Cochran? After he basically said, I kind of envy him, and he said, I went to Zephyr Cochran High School. And he was like, they named the high school after me. He was just started, just going on and about the big marble statue, reaching for the stars. And he said, you stand in the exact spot. And it was just like, Jordy, you're just letting flow a lot of things that you shouldn't be telling him. And
Yeah.
when he was going to exit, he said the word leak. And
I gotta
apparently
take a leak.
in the 24th century, they don't use that kind of, slang.
Is it? Doesn't
Yeah, I
anyone in
love
the
that.
24th century ever pee? And he's like, "Oh, leak. That's funny." And
That's actually the first time I'd ever heard that term as well, because that's a very American thing. It's not a British thing at all. And when he said that, I was just like, he's got a what? And then when he said, don't you people in the 24th century ever pee? I'm just like, oh my God, that is really good. And I'm just like, yeah.
I like that. I like that scene. And then when they went to hunt him down, because he was running from them, he said, I don't want to be a statue. And we have to
yeah,
right the face of him.
yeah, Riker. It's like you told him about the statue, really?
Oh.
But I'm sorry, I have to mention this. Geordie's eyes.
Hmm.
I mean, when I saw
Ocular
his eyes,
implants.
I absolutely, I mean, I adore those ocular implants. I really do. And when you saw them working and turning, and when they zoomed right in, I was just like, oh my God, that's so cool. I want those eyes.
Well, this is the thing too. Jordy was blind. He was born blind. And when
Yeah,
he got on the Enterprise, when he boarded the Enterprise, one of the first things when he was a sick bay was Dr. Crusher examining him because he said ever since he wore his visors he experienced pain and stuff. Well, she gave him a few suggestions and stuff, and he rejected and everything else. But that
Hmm.
goes to show you the progressive uh, nature of Star Trek in in the technological advance when it comes to like technology and stuff. It's like we would they have the ability to make somebody see, a blind person see. So to me, it's like wow, they was able to finally give Jordy eyes so he could see after that many years. All his life he'd been blind, and there's been technological breakthroughs in not just Starfleet, but I guess in medical breakthroughs. I'm gonna use this word Daystrom Institute because it seems to be where a
yeah.
lot of advances are made in medical in science and stuff and everything. But like that goes to show you that wow, they can give people sight, blind
But
people
Yeah,
sight.
also,
and
as far as I'm aware,
plastic.
again, as far as I'm aware, that was that was the second and final time we saw through Geordie's eyes.
Hmm.
The
Mhm.
first
Right.
time was it in season one or season two?
Season one, Heart of
Uh,
Season
Glory.
one. Yep.
yeah. Um, he said because I always remember him like Picard was just like, "What was that?" And he's like, "It's data." And he's like, "He's got an aura around him." He's an android, of course, he's got an aura around him. But we never saw through Geordie's eyes again until the first contact
Hmm.
when his eyes did. did the thing to zoom in, and we never saw through Geordie's eyes again.
Mm.
And and this is a little bit off topic, but not away from the crew, and still discussing Geordie's eyes. In the episode The Naked Now, when he was infected with that virus, and he was begging Tasha to help him see
Oh yeah.
in Insurrection, he for a short while was able to see as everybody else did. And I remember specifically in The Naked Now, he said that he wanted to see it. It's something about he wanted to see a sunrise. And
And he
then in
saw sunrise.
Insurrection, when Picard went and met him, it was just like, I've never seen a sunrise, at least not the way you do.
Mm.
And I mean, I'm getting emotional just talking about it, but it,
Mhm.
again, it all ties in. And it's a beautiful thing. And it was also beautiful to see through Geordie's eyes with his implants again. Well, that was the first time for me.
In Picard, you kind of
Um,
saw him with his action. I don't think he even wore anything for season 3 of Picard.
What? Say again?
Oh, for Geordie's eyes, wasn't it Picard? I don't think he wore anything for season 3 of Picard.
That's a good question. I didn't pay attention.
I think it reached just the point they could just have him have his natural eyes.
No,
Mm.
he still had the implants in
Did he?
Picard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but talking about Jordy's eyes. Let's see. Now I'm starting to hear my own echo. What the heck?
We all need to restart.
I'll say, well, yeah, we're getting it. Almost getting close to 2 hours and 40 minutes. So we're getting close to the end of the movie. But did Pulaski have anything to do with the implants that Jordy had?
Mm.
Because early in season 2, she mentioned something about him getting ocular implants, and he dismissed
Yeah,
it because
that's
he'd
quite true.
lose some of the vision that he had. So
Mm.
makes you wonder.
Yes, that is a good
To-
question.
and
Yeah,
yes, he
he's
still did
yeah
have his
he's
ocular implants in season 3 of Picard.
yeah. But yeah, we already talked about the big blow up in the observation lounge with Lily and Picard, so we don't really need to touch on that again. But one thing I did notice first
Okay.
off in the movie, the three the servos for the deflector dish,
Come back to that.
red, green, red, yellow, and blue. The
Yeah,
three colors of the uniforms.
yeah, I noticed that as well.
Okay.
And then, of course, that one blatant error was the one that Hawk was working on that Picard had to float over to because Hawk got assimilated. It one shot, it was horizontal, then it was vertical, then it was horizontal again.
But
So
yeah, I
there's
mean, just mentioning that scene, when the Borg are floating away, and Worf's just like assimilate this.
one
That's
of the
actually one
other
of my
good.
favorite lines from the movie.
And how
Oh
he waited
no,
for the dish to get out from the shadow of the earth so he could get a nice clean shot. And
yeah,
that was pretty
I
clever.
love that. I mean, one thing that hasn't been mentioned is Data getting it on with Her Majesty. Um, and
but 0.68 seconds.
yeah, but just entire, Data being captured, and I mean when when he first sees the skin, And the Queen says, "Do you know what this is, Data?" And he's just like, "It seems like you're gonna graft organic skin onto my endoskeletal structure." And then she just like, "What a cool description for such a beautiful gift." And then she blows across it, and you see all the goosebumps raise and Data's reaction. I'm just like, "Holy shit, dude!" You know?
You know, in that one particular scene,
Did he ejaculate?
I was wondering, did he pop a boner? Did he get an erection? I'm like, did this android,
Yeah.
went,
I'm just like, "Oh my god!" You know, I'm glad that was a shot of his face and not like his full self, because that could have been a bit awkward. Um, you know, if I had that reaction every time I got goosebumps, I'd be a happy woman. But
okay. I mean, he must have did it to Tasha because, she just said we keep it between ourselves and stuff and everything. He went, isolinear tips on her with his fingers, probably.
but you know that the entire relationship between him and the Queen was just beautiful. I loved it, you know. But one thing that I did not like about this movie, and that is, how the hell could Picard forget about Data?
Say that again?
How the hell could Picard forget about Data?
Oh yeah, I was thinking that too when I watched it this afternoon. Just like he just
He
thought
has
he was
so much
gone.
going on. He has so much going on with himself and everything else that, Data.
But Data managed to communicate with him. And I don't think it was a conscious thing on Data's part, or maybe it was. Maybe he knew, like, because he knew that Picard could hear them. Maybe all of this time he'd been trying to communicate with the captain through some form of link through the Borg, because Data was kind of partially assimilated, I think. Or they tried at least. But, he was able to communicate with Picard, and that was an interesting thing as well. And the way that he played the Queen was one of Data's finest moments, in my opinion.
His objective he still had one single objective: to puncture
Yeah.
the plasma coolant tank.
Yeah.
Which seemed pretty flimsy when he did it.
I mean, you remember he
Yeah,
is
but
a
don't forget, Data is strong.
Yeah, but the the way it looked, it was just
It did. I
thin.
know what you mean. I know what you're
It
talking
did.
about.
But,
But
I mean, Data has got some strength behind
oh
it.
yeah, but backing up just a little bit on that, when the drones were put more of the skin on Data's forearm, I was since I was watching it on my laptop, I was able to observe it a little bit better. Where I swear it looked like one of the drones was smiling when he was doing it.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was very
that's actually
subtle,
kind of
just like a
creepy. I
little
like it.
the corner of his mouth just kind of turned a little towards the camera and smiled.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that. Okay.
Yeah, and something very undrone like when they closed the thing over Data's hand again, and
Hmm.
like I think this was earlier on, um, and it closed the thing over Data's wrist, and then he patted it,
I
and I'm just
noticed
like,
that too.
that is very undrone like.
I see that too. I always wonder about that all these years.
But yeah, it was. it was very interesting what happened to Data. But it was actually really nice to see Brent Spiner's true eye colour for a change.
His what?
You know, because Brent Spiner's true eye
Yes.
colour, when Data had the flash over one side of his face, his hair was a little messed up, and he had a blue eye. I mean, I think Brent Spiner's eyes are beautiful, and it was so lovely to see, like for the first time.
Not the first time. Parallels, we saw him in blue eyes.
Parallel.
The couple episodes ago, we talked about when Worf was jumping realities. There's one reality where
Oh,
Data had blue eyes.
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, like, from when I first saw it,
Hmm.
it was really nice to see Brent Spiner's true eye colour. And then obviously I didn't see Next Generation until after that, and there was quite a few instances where we saw Brent Spiner as a human, obviously because he played Dr. Sung. And the first time we saw that was that double episode. What was it called when Data started to dream and there was all the crows and you saw Dr. Sung communicating with Data?
Birthright.
Yeah, Birthright. Thank you, my darling. But yeah, that was like the first time in Next Generation, to my knowledge, as far as I can remember, that we actually saw Brent Spiner in the flesh, so to speak.
Yeah, I would say no, Zach. Say I don't think the Vulcans were more ill-tempered. They were just probably taken more aback by how emotional the humans actually were.
You're right. You're right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's
But yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, the Vulcans are arrogant enough to make that grand entrance and the whole. You know, he could have taken that down less dramatically. You know,
Yeah.
Did
but
anybody?
I think
I
it
would
was.
say, Dave, do you have this in your notes about the Vulcan that stepped off the out of the ship first?
I didn't write anything specific. What were you thinking?
According to some sources and stuff, that was Spock's grandfather.
Oh, I wanted to bring this up later because I remember when I went to see it. Everybody was. I had a friend of mine in our little group that went to see me. Was like, oh, "That's Spock's father. That's Sarek." And I'm like, "It's a little too soon for Sarek." I think. I mean, I know
Yeah.
Obi-Wan, but it seems a little too soon. But he swore up and down, and there was some chat amongst fans at the time if it was actually Sarek or not. And I was just like, "No, I can't buy that as Sarek just yet." It's just
Yeah, you're right about that. According to some stuff that I've read, and then I've heard in continuity that they are playing that Vulcan as Spock's grandfather.
That would make more sense with being his
It
grandfather.
would. It would be logical to
Yes.
make more sense.
Yeah, Sarek wasn't born for like almost 100 years after the events of that of the movie. 102 years to be exact. He was born in 2165, so it would probably be his like father or grandfather, possibly.
Yeah, that would make more sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can be arrogant without being emotional. I think to a certain extent, especially once you look at the way the Vulcans are raised.
Look at the Andorians. You
Yeah.
know.
Katie just jumped in on it. They suppressed.
Yeah, they suppress, not eradicate. Some emotion can slip through to the surface, and arrogance is the main one.
Mm-hmm. And that's what really grinds Archer's gears. No,
But
he wasn't an asshole drunk. He was just a true alcoholic. I can speak to that from from
Yeah.
experience, being almost
There you
11
go.
months. Yeah.
uh,
Because yeah, even was it Archer or Trip in Enterprise when it was the episode Regeneration. Was it Regeneration? Well, the Enterprise episode with the Borg, anyway. Um, um, it, I think it was Archer who was looking through the archives and he was saying um, about Cochrane telling stories when he was drunk, and he was always telling drunken stories and about
oh,
astronauts from the future and cybernetic creatures coming
Yeah,
to
they just
enslave Earth or something. And
yeah, that was definitely regeneration because yeah, they
yeah,
just fucked it up to him being an alcoholic. But
well, to
with
Paul
me,
did.
yeah,
It was to Paul.
if I
She's the one who said that.
say I wouldn't be getting these if I was keeping drunk, Zach. See,
but no,
I like
the
collecting
fact
shiny
that
things.
they tied in so much more than just a nod to what happened to the Borg sphere that the Enterprise destroyed back in 2063. You know, they actually they didn't actually like directly quote Cochrane, but they kind of like semi quoted him. And that they mentioned about his drinking and that he was always drunk and telling stories about, you know, people from the future and cybernetic creatures wanting to enslave the human race. But everyone thought that it was just stories that he told when he was drunk, just to entertain people. And
Mhm.
I thought that that was a nice touch to tie in the movie First Contact as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because they didn't have to go that far. They didn't have
Well,
to go that far with it, but they did, and it worked.
well, and
My
I
question,
think that goes right back to the fact that they kind of screwed the pooch from the first episode. They kind of say we got to be more mindful of what's already been made as canon, so they started getting better as the series progressed.
exactly, not to say, try to rewrite stuff and everything, but let me mention this before, we get going and stuff and everything, because it's almost 11 o'clock here. Um, the Enterprise D, or not Enterprise D, Enterprise E failed to do one thing that we wouldn't get regeneration. They did not clean up their mess. They destroyed the Borg sphere,
Yeah.
but they left debris. They left all evidence in the past when they went back to the future. And it's like, didn't you just know what Starfleet temporal mechanics would
Yeah.
say? What they would say about not trying to clean up your mess with
Yeah.
going time and everything else. You do everything you can to alleviate any kind of footprints.
Would they have sent? I mean, it's more time travel. Would they have sent a cleanup crew?
In all honesty,
Yeah, exactly. A temporal cleanup crew.
Yeah.
I mean, would they have known for certain that any of the debris from the Q, why do I keep saying freaking Q, from the sphere,
Hmm.
would they have known for certain whether or not any of it had got like caught up in Earth's
Gravity.
gravity and gone down? They could have just thought that it exploded and drifted off into space.
I know long range
Or
sensors was
burned up in
down.
the atmosphere.
Hmm.
Long range sensors was down. They had short range sensors, but I guess they wasn't really focusing on their mindset. I guess they wasn't focusing on how do we clean up this mess. Keep our involvement minimum, so the timeline when we get back to our time, it will be as we
Oh yeah.
never left. You know, it's one of those little
And, you know,
things.
they were more bothered about the Vulcans not detecting him and getting back home. So it is understandable that they may have like not checked for that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we're coming up on 3 hours. Travis said it's 11 o'clock coming up for him. It's 11 o'clock coming up for Phil as well. It's
Yeah.
4
sun's up
a.m.
where Katie's at. They're getting close.
Yeah, the sun's coming up soon.
It's been fun discussing this particular movie. We gotta discuss other, Star Trek movies.
These. Yeah.
You
Indeed.
know?
Can I jump in because I didn't get a kind of chance to kind of squeeze in earlier. I've always considered this one of the better written Star Trek movies, and I do enjoy some of the
Yes.
I do think this is one of the more thoughtful episodes. And I know it was kind of discussed, but I still remember what stood out to me the most in this film was that intense discussion between Picard and Lily. And I
Yeah.
think it was some of the best written dialogue in that scene. Even if some friends of mine who weren't really big into Star Trek were kind of impressed with it. I was just like, someone just hand them an award just for that scene. The performance in that
Yes.
was just
Mhm.
so incredible. I've gone back and just when I didn't get a chance to actually be able to watch the whole movie because I jumped onto Netflix thinking that, oh, all the episodes were there. I thought the movies were going to be there. I went and like, oh my God, it's not there. So I've been trying to get it through other means. And it was not coming through. I was not able to get the full thing in time. But what I did do is decide as I jumped onto YouTube, and because there are so many scenes on YouTube, I just started. I've seen the movie many times, so I know most of it. I just wanted to revisit some scenes, but that one in particular, that particular scene, I needed to find it and revisit it just because I found it so impacting and so it's still one of my like all of Star Trek is one of my favorite scenes, movies,
Oh,
television,
yeah.
everything.
Absolutely.
They
Absolutely.
assimilate entire worlds and we fall back.
Yeah,
Or they invade our space and we fall back. They assimilate entire worlds and we fall back.
Mhm,
Not again. The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
mhm.
But just the
No,
raw emotion that Stewart brings to that role and
yeah,
says, I will make them pay for what they done. I mean, just like,
and just her last line in that when she just looks at him and she's like, "You broke your
you
little
broke
ship."
your little ships.
Yeah, I love
Yes,
that.
and you could tell that just like struck a chord, and the whole performance in that was so good.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It was. It was really. It was really good. I mean, like you say, from the TNG, this was. A lot of people will vote that this is probably the TNG number one movie.
yeah,
It's,
Absolutely.
all of them. It is for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though I saw Generations a total of 8 times those first 2 weekends that came out, I only saw First Contact once, maybe
Dave, you
twice
beat
in
me.
theaters.
Dave, you beat me by two.
Mhm.
You beat me by two. Generations. You beat me by two. And First Contact, I've seen that 4 times.
Yeah, well, you got me beat by 2 then on that one, but like I said, that like Generations, I saw that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday opening weekend, and then the following weekend was Thanksgiving. I was stuck at home, and the rest of the
Uh,
family went and saw family, so I had nothing else to do. So I went Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
yeah.
I don't blame you.
And I think it's
I've
Sunday
never
when
seen a Star
I did.
Trek movie in the cinema.
Mm,
Oh,
Uh,
oh,
uh,
man.
look for
See?
the retro showings. I didn't kind of start seeing Star Trek movies until the fourth, and I was so upset that I never got to see the first ones in the cinema. And I know. Sorry, Katie. I know you're not big on TOS, but two keeps having retro showings every
Yeah.
5 years for its anniversary. We'll
Yep.
have retro
We
showings.
don't have that across here.
I would go see that every time it would have a retro showing just because I'd wanted to see that one cinematically so many times. But one and
And
three
you know what?
we have not seen in the cinema.
I was because it came out in the first motion picture came out in what 79.
Hmm.
I was only born in 78, so I didn't get a chance to go see that movie. So
Yeah, yeah.
when I get a chance to go see it, I will jump on it.
Hmm.
And what's that? Two. Star Trek 2, 3. I think I did go see 4 when but I can. It was
I
so
hope
long
so.
ago, but I didn't get to go to the earlier ones to see those because I was just too young. I liked it, but I wasn't liked it like that.
Oh, I love 4.
Yeah, I want to say Undiscovered Country was the first one I saw because the opening credits was great, and when Praxis exploded, I actually jumped.
Oh,
Yeah, that's my
oh,
favorite opening.
yes, Undiscovered Country was so good.
The
I love it.
frustrating thing is that every time I hear there's this, like Star Trek 3 apparently had a retro showing, except in Canada. I was so mad. I was so mad.
Oh, I hate that. I hate that. You guys can't
One
get
day
stuff like
only. I'm like, oh, and I got to work that night. Like, oh.
that.
Zach's popped in.
And I managed to work the screen.
Yeah.
Sorry, proud moment.
I made an appearance. You get a
You did.
guest.
Yeah. So
Long
nice
time
to
no
see
see,
your
Zach.
beautiful face, darling.
Go on. Don't make me. Don't have me interrupt.
Well, we're just getting things wrapped up. We're going on 3 hours. See, I think this might
Yeah.
be a record for an episode.
Mm.
No, we've gone longer.
Well, yeah, well,
Oh,
they're back on
Twitter
the
space,
Twitter
yeah.
Space days, yeah. Yeah.
9
When I
hours.
when I slept through the last half of it.
Yeah. Your snores became a soundtrack.
Those
During
are
my
some
drunk
interesting
days.
days. Interesting days. So we moved from Twitter to now we're
Mm.
live. But Dave, you can go ahead and start your closing.
Well, saying, well, Zach popped in. Was there any like glaring things that we didn't discuss that you wanted to think of, or just popping in to say hi?
I'm just popping in to say hi. You pretty much hit it. So I've enjoyed the conversation.
Well,
I've
thank
been
you.
cycling. I've been cycling through. So, but
Uh,
Yeah,
as
but
always,
say so yeah. I don't have a graphic made for it yet, but say next week we're going to just go back to the 90-minute format. So we're going to talk about the episode Q Who from season 2, where the introduction of the Borg. So
Yes,
it'll be a
I like
lot
that.
easier to digest than a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, because that's when the Borg still had to plug into the wall.
Mm-hmm.
They're alcoves, yeah.
Yeah, they've
And
not
then,
got Windows charging yet.
and then we get to talk with Manu about his Q with Keegan
That's in
Delaney.
2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because 14th and then yeah, the 21st we're gonna talk regeneration. I think there's like another let's say I think we still got we still got another Monday after that. So we got that. We got that. Oh shit, no.
Didn't Tyson
Okay.
say?
yeah.
Didn't Tyson
Actually,
say
no,
that?
I'm just looking at the calendar. Say the 21st is the day before his birthday, so we're actually next week is going to be with Manu.
Okay, okay.
So
That's
we're
what I was
going to do
gonna ask.
Q2 next week,
is it a?
and
Is
then
it
we'll
going to be
do
a force?
Q Who on the 21st, and then the 28th we're going to wrap the month with regeneration. So
Is the Manu one going to be a
Oh, wait, you can see it.
hopefully,
420 homage?
yeah, yeah, say yeah, 420's on Sunday, 421's who knows what they're doing. He might be gold prospecting again. I don't know. But I talked with Cassie yesterday, saying it looks like they're getting close to getting the set ready to go for doing the shows again on Wednesday. So probably not this Wednesday, but hopefully next Wednesday.
Well,
Well,
Manu, a couple of weeks ago, Manu did put a post out. I don't know what social media platform, or if it was all of them, saying that DT would be back next month, meaning April. So,
we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll make it official and just have it the day after his birthday.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, he wanted to celebrate in style, so I figured, okay, we won't do it the day before your birthday, so I think probably some quality time with his heterosexual life mate.
Oh, I love the Lady Val. I always send the Lady Val much healing and much love. Mwah.
Yeah,
That's an
she's been
that's
going
an
through a rough
interesting
patch from what I've heard,
protocol.
but hopefully things are going okay with her.
Yeah.
But anyways, until next week, have a good night, everybody, and may Spock be with you.
Toodles.
Peace.